Today I'm sitting with former professional baseball player CJ Wilson. CJ was drafted by the Texas Rangers in the 5th round in the 2001 draft. CJ was the two-time All-Star, played in the World Series twice in his 12-year career. CJ is also the owner and founder of CJ Wilson Racing, a professional race car driving business, and he's the owner of 3 car dealerships, which include BMW, Audi, and Porsche. And he's a Bitcoin advocate and evangelist. And finally, and most importantly, CJ is the husband and father of 3. CJ, welcome to the show.
We did it, Jay. We did it. Here we are.
Just so everyone knows, it took me 3 times to get that out. And we do intros now because I've gotten feedback that the people.
No, I'm saying we made it. We made it through 2020, and now we're podcasting. We're on video.
We're podcasting. Yeah.
A whole nother thing.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah.
So as you know, I bring people onto the show that I consider to be docents. I define the term docent. Well, the definition of docent is a guide in a museum or an art gallery, but I think of it a little bit differently. I loosely define docents as people that have influence and help shape the lives of others. And these people include your family, your friends, people you looked up to, teachers, employers, professional athletes like yourself. Docent just aren't just people that we've met or spoken to directly, though. They're also the people that we look up to and we read about and see on TV. These are people that we idolize. They've impacted us in some way. And so, like I said, I bring people on this show that I consider to be docents. And CJ, my friend, you're a docent. With that said, I want to learn more about who your docents were growing up. So before we get started, for Lamar, tell me your top 3 rappers of all time.
Dylan, and Dylan. That's if anybody's seen the Dave Chappelle show. No, Tupac was for me the number 1 rapper. I think just because of when I was born and what I was listening to when I was a teenager, where I was in my life, and being from the West Coast, obviously the West Side rides the night. So I would say Tupac was number 1. I would say collectively, I really like the Wu-Tang Clan, even though they're an East Coast group or whatever. But Lamar always has this thing on Clubhouse about like putting people on the spot. If it's like 8:00 at night, he's like, "Yo, fam, I'm gonna ask you a question. Who are your favorite 3 rappers of all time?" And I'm like, RZA, the Reza.
RZA's number 3 for you? Yeah.
No, RZA's number 2.
Well, number 2, right? Yeah, so number 2, yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, no, that's a cop out to do the Wu-Tang Clan is like the whole thing. And I'm like, okay. So I don't know. I mean, I probably would have said, man, I don't even. The thing is, like, I stopped listening to rap in like 2004. So I would say,
really.
Like,
I mean, who's listening to this rap these days?
The rap today is terrible. So it's just,
I agree.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But I would probably put Lil Wayne as number 3 just because he puts so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Lil Wayne, but he puts so much stuff out. It's like constantly. And that's difficult. So I respect that a lot. So I think out of the modern guys, I would put him, out there. But it's funny because I'm not like the biggest Jay-Z fan, and a lot of people are like, "Well, what about Jay-Z?" And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like maybe
Lamar has him at number 1. I mean, yeah.
Nah, forget that. So then he's got me like investigating all these other people that I'd never heard about. So I'm doing some research on Black Thought now. Like that's the guy that I'm like digging into to see if I can really jive with his stuff. So thanks, Lamar. Appreciate the cultural.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into your background. So where did you grow up? You grew up in California?
Yeah, I grew up in Huntington Beach, known as Surf City, USA. I didn't really surf a lot as a kid. I did bodyboarding because we couldn't afford a surfboard. I mean, surfboards are expensive, right? They're like $300, $400, $500. And then depending on how big you are, you need like a bigger or smaller surfboard. My dad didn't really surf, so I would go out with other kids that would go to the beach, and then we would all kind of bodyboard together, which is like, a little fun thing. And eventually I got pretty good. Yeah, boogie boards, bro. So then I got pretty good at that. And then the local break where I lived was the pier. So we would do the Huntington Beach Pier. And then depending on what the waves were like, because we would get, like California's shaped like a sock, right? Yeah. So you get waves from the north towards like Alaskan storms, and you get like Mexican storms that come up from the south, and then you get kind of westerly storms that are kind of sloppy. And the southern storms, when we would get those, Newport Beach would break, but most importantly, the wedge. The wedge is like the top bodyboarding spot in the entire continental U.S. because it's just so heavy. And when it gets big, it'll be 30 feet, which is like pretty wild because most waves break, especially beach breaks. Like Hawaii or somewhere exotic, Tahiti, you might get some like 20, 30 footers. But typically you're getting like 6 to 8 foot, 10 foot waves max. And just because it's all sandbars.
It's like Jersey. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the wedge, basically, like the waves would reflect off of the pier or the jetty, the rock jetty, and then come this way, and then it would catch this wave. So like both of these things would turn and like come up, and then you would just see this massive 30-foot wall of water. And it was something that I always thought was really ballsy, you know, because people get really hurt there. I was never really good enough to go out when it was big, but I would go out there when it would be, you know, 6 feet, 12 feet, something like that. But, you know, I was just always around the water as a kid, and then obviously playing a lot of baseball. So that was the two things that I got into activity-wise, riding BMX bikes and stuff like that, making my own ramps, crashing into stuff, flying off the handlebars. Very lucky never to have been hurt doing any extreme athletics, but always played baseball. That was the thing, baseball since I was about 8.5. And
what did your parents do? Like, tell us about your parents. What socioeconomic kind of background, and you know, what your dad do for a living, and
like my parents split up when I was like 3.5, and so I had a interesting kind of web effect, right? My grandparents lived down the street, my uncle lived down the street, my aunt lived about 10 minutes away. So, and my dad, even though my parents were divorced, my dad lived about 3 or 4 blocks away. So my dad would pick me up and take me to school, take me home. My grandparents would take me to baseball practice or whatever. So I had this sort of decentralized family, you know, and I just sort of got what I could get from everybody. But my grandfather was probably my biggest influence in that sense, because he was the most solid dude. He held, you know, my mom's dad, he sort of held their family together through ups and downs. And he was also really successful. He was he was a math whiz. I mean, he was a calculus professor at the Naval Academy, and then he was like in the Korean War and doing like all the ballistics calculations on paper with pencils and slide rules and stuff like that. So he was a stock trader, a card counter, a violinist, an athlete, a golfer, an amateur, like, you know, charcoal sketch guy. He did everything. And so I really looked up to him, and he was really even keeled, and I was not. I was not even keeled. I was super emotional, high highs, low lows.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that had anything to do with like the parental kind of situation, or?
Well, Jay, I'm a Scorpio, and we tend to be pretty intense. So I think it was just because I was just sort of out there, and I remember like in God, what was it like? Yeah, I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I remember playing like dodgeball at summer camp or something like that. And like I was on like the equivalent, like kickball. We were playing like kickball.
Sure.
Or I was on the equivalent of second base, and like the kid that was, you know, like I was the winning run or whatever. So he missed it. Like he flew out or something like that and didn't get a hit. I don't know where it was called, kickball. And I just remember like sitting down on my hands and be like, because we lost. And I just wasn't capable of dealing with some of that stuff. But as that on the low side, the sort of patheticness of being a wimpy, whiny kid. But on the other side, my coach told me that I needed to quit baseball and play soccer because I didn't have what it takes when I was 9. And so I told him, no, that's okay, sir. I'm going to be a major league all-star one day. You'll see. And he was like, oh, that's cute, kid. Good job. That's cute. And then so I was like, all right, well, this guy doesn't obviously know what he's talking about because I'm going to make it. So it just depended on what I was doing, but I had a lot of confidence in my ability to learn more than anything else. So I just looked at it like, if I could see somebody doing something, then I could mimic them, I could imitate them, I could maybe learn how to do that thing. And so that's where, for me, the baseball thing came from. Like, number one, a desire to get out of the family situation I was in, which was sort of like, I didn't really like the total dynamic. I wanted to do my own thing and start fresh. And I saw baseball as the opportunity to do that. And
what age would you say that you started to think that? When did you start thinking that? Like, the baseball could be your opportunity?
8 years old, 9 years old. But I didn't play T-ball. I didn't play coach pitch. I just sort of like well, let's see. I want to be like Don Johnson and drive a Ferrari Testarossa, and I need to make a couple $100,000 a year because that car costs $125,000. So in order for me to do that, I need to get a sick job, and that means that I need to be awesome at something. And you know, I realized being like my dad was like 6 feet tall, like $170. I was like, well, NBA, we're rule that out. We're just going to go ahead and put that on the shelf. I live in SoCal. There's no hockey playing. There's no ice. So like, let's rule that out. And then football, dudes have traumatic injuries. Like, oh, I'll rule that out. So then it was like, okay, I could be a baseball player or a golfer. And my uncle was actually a professional golfer.
Oh, for real? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he played on like the Nike Tour and played a lot of open events and stuff like that. And then eventually, once he retired because he wanted to sort of settle down, he got married, had kids, lived in Glendale. But he was like legitimately like a professional golfer. And my grandfather golfed, my mom golfed, my grandma golfed, my uncle, who was like a construction worker.
It's all new information. You never told me this, dude.
Yeah. So everybody golfed, right?
Yeah, it's cool.
And I was decent. I was good, like I had a good swing, but I played right-handed because I didn't want to mess up my lefty baseball swing. So I was out there golfing with my uncle or my grandpa one time at the local course called Mesa Verde in Costa Mesa. And it's like one of those municipal courses. It's like, $16 to play 18 holes or something like that. It's like really cheap. For me, it was like $16 plus 2 sleeves of balls that I would lose one in the lake. But, we're out there doing like our little like putting warm up or whatever. And my grandfather was really like he was my Mr. Miyagi, he was able to like say things in a very distilled way. And it would completely like, interesting. He would just say things to me like that. And it would just sort of blow my mind. So we're sitting there putting or whatever, and I'm like working on my game. And then he gets pooped on by a bird. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to kill that bird. Like I was like so mad. And he was like, what are you going to do? It's over. Like, it's over. Like, it's fine. Like, we're here to play golf. We're not here to worry about getting pooped on. And I was like, you literally got bird poop on your head. Like, how are you not freaking out? He goes, you know how when you shoot a bad shot and you get angry at yourself and you like do this with the club? He goes, that's not what golf's about. And I was like, well, maybe I just don't have the personality for this. And he goes, that's okay. And I was like, is it okay for me to quit golf? He goes, today's your last time golfing. That's fine. And this is like before we golfed.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. And he goes, you like baseball, right? I said, yeah, of course. This time I was like probably 12 or 13. He goes, just do that. I was like, okay. And that was it. Then I never played golf again.
So at 12 years old, were you focused 100% at that point on baseball? Like no other sports?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I literally like wrote down on a typewriter. I was like, I will be a Major League All-Star.
That is awesome.
I will be in the major leagues and drive a Ferrari. And I will buy my mom a cool house. Like that. And my mom had it on her wall until I was probably like 25 years old.
That's fucking awesome.
You better believe I got that contract. She's like, you're buying me a house. I said, it's like, yeah. Okay,
which you did. You told me. You did buy her house, right?
I actually did. Yeah, I did. Sort of a funny but not funny story. But yeah, no. So for me, my grandfather was a big inspiration, but mostly because he was able to compartmentalize everything and make it academic to the point that he could say, well, he would look at the lottery, right? And he had this whole graph, like an Excel spreadsheet of the lottery. And he had this theory. He's like, listen, see these little bubbles where like none of these numbers have been called? There's these clusters. And like statistically speaking, everything has to even out. So, this is where I play, because he would play like where the hole was like this. So if there's an Excel spreadsheet and these numbers hadn't been played, like he just kept playing those numbers as the bubble, like, and he would win like routinely. He would win like 100.
For real?
Yeah, for real. Not like all the time, but he would also go to Vegas. And my grandma.
But there's a science to it, essentially. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Statistical. That's the whole thing. He was like statistical. So he was calculating. He'd be in the stands watching me play, and then after the game, he would give me like a yellow piece of paper. Those little like drafting pencils, the yellow ones with like the tan thing on it. And you like twist it. So he had 1 billion of those, and because like I said, he used to sketch and stuff all the time. So he would hand me like a stat sheet and be like, it was like first pitch strikes, like total times guys chased, how many 2-strike counts, how many hits I gave up when I was ahead of the count, like all these things. Yeah. And he was like trying to calculate like WAR and all these other advanced statistics, but this was, back in like 1992 or something like that. So you like not really knowing about sabermetrics or any of that stuff that came out eventually, but he was always evaluating everything he saw. He was always looking. And I think that just sort of, that was just something that I inherited, I guess.
And then he taught you about he got you into stocks at that age, right? Like 13 years old, you said you started trading stocks? Yeah. That's amazing, exactly. By the way.
Yeah. So my whole family, I'm not going to call us like, well, we're all gamers, right? So like my mom and I both got into Nintendo Power Magazine for high sports on Tetris. My grandma like loved Dr. Mario. All my uncles and aunts and everybody, like on my mom's side of the family, everybody played video games. Even my dad played video games. So, we were all really into it. But I think everybody saw this game aspect of things. And then my grandfather, because he was an investor, he was just a savvy guy, he would talk to me about stuff, and then we would sit down in the same way that I do with my kids, because obviously like I care about financial success now to the point that I'm going to tell my daughter about Bitcoin. But he was like, okay, well, let's talk about the stock market. And I'm like, what's the stock market? And I'd be sitting there like building with stuff with Legos. And I'd go over to my grandparents' house because my mom would be at work late or whatever,
Yeah.
or the weekends or whatever if she had stuff to do. And then she would have like a showing. She was like mortgage broker / real estate agent. And then my dad did some of that, did some banking stuff, like worked at a bank, not like, big guy that worked at UBS doing investment banking. And then he did some stuff in retail, like managed some departments. And then one day when I was in college, this is funny. My dad goes, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "I want to drive a big shiny gas truck." And I was like, "What? Like, what?" And literally, I'm like 20. This is like after one of my baseball games, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a truck driver." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Well, yeah, like you're done with baseball. You're gonna go on to the pro ball now, and like you're gonna do your thing." He's like, "So you don't need me to be there like at practice all the time or whatever." And he's like, "So I love driving, and I like being by myself, and I like the open road, and I like not talking to people." And I was like, "Are you talking like?" What is this like? Did you just watch the Sylvester Stallone movie? Like
Over the top.
Like, yeah. So anyway, so he did that. So then my dad for like a couple years was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna be a truck driver." So it was kind of funny. So yeah, he bounced around a little bit, but the big thing about my dad is he sacrificed a lot of, I would say, like personal job opportunities so he could be close to me for baseball and get me from place to place. Because I was playing on like Sunday, we played 2 games on a Sunday. I played like Wednesday and Saturday with one team, like a Tuesday with another team. I was all over the place. Like I used to play probably 100, 150 games a year.
Wow. And basically, I mean, we talked about this quite a bit about like what makes a kid become a professional athlete. And for some people, they're genetically gifted. You told me for you were not genetically gifted and you had to put a lot of work in, right? So like, where did the desire and the drive come from for that? Because that's just something that, yeah.
Yeah, I would look at people's baseball cards, right? And I would say, "Oh, this guy's 5'11", 190, and this guy's 6'3", 191, and this guy's 5'10", 182." Yeah. I'm like, these are all like regular height people. Like these are regular size people. Yeah. Like I could do this. I could be one of these guys. Now,
how tall are you, CJ? How tall?
I'm 6'1" now, but like freshman year of high school, I started early. I skipped a grade when I was somewhere in the like when I started Montessori, and I skipped from I think into 4th grade. So I should have been in 3rd grade. I went to 4th grade.
Okay.
It was like test scores or whatever. And then socially, I think that hurt me a lot. It really set me off, on a bad path because it kind of put me in the corner. Yeah. I was the young kid. I was the weird kid. Like nobody really wanted to socialize with me and stuff like that. And so it really wasn't until the baseball thing that I became, I would say, more socially accepted. Until then, I was bullied a lot, and I was like, let's just do this. Let's just fight. You know what I mean? And I just got sick of being bullied, so I just started swinging on people. And I think so. The combination of standing up for myself, like literally getting in fistfights as a kid, and then not being the happiest kid because I didn't really have the resources to get what I wanted to.
Yep.
And then also thinking that I had this goal that was so far out. You know what I mean? To be a Major League Baseball player, coming from Huntington Beach is possible because there's a lot of people that come from our area. But realistically, statistically, it's a very bad option as a career choice, in terms of like how many people actually make it versus how many people start. It's like
statistically, it's impossible technically, right?
Yeah, little league, and then it's like beep, like that, and then it's like right at the top, like there you go. And then by the way, when you're there, you've got to like face Derek Jeter. You're like, okay, this is harder than that. But it was a really good run, and I had always an opportunity to look at other people in a way of saying not like, oh, I want to be like him, but like, can I outdo him? Is this guy doing something that I can or can't do? Like if someone's so much bigger than me, like Magnus for Magnuson, the world's strongest man, like I might not be able to do the keg toss as well as him. But if it's like baseball is like putting the ball in a very specific place or hitting the ball in a very specific path, and like I can do that. I can figure out that if a pitcher's going like this and he cocks his elbow up, then maybe he's throwing a slider. I can figure that out. So if I'm on second base and I see this, I'm like, oh, here comes a slider, and I would just take off running. There's things like that, like you're always looking for those little edges. And
did people teach you that, or you just catch that on your own? Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, it just came from a desire to just win. I just wanted to win so bad. I was so competitive, and I was so demoralized when I would lose because I felt like my whole entire identity was only valid if I won, if I did well, if I got better. And that improvement complex in Japanese is called kaizen. You want to get a little bit better every day. So that sort of thing, that didn't really come from anybody. It was really me, in a way, like the albino guy from Da Vinci Code wanting to whip himself to go
Mm.
forward. You know,
Yeah.
in a way, it was like a fervor, and I just had to do it. I figured like, okay, well, in order for me to do this, I would have these inspirational figures like Bruce Lee or like James Bond or like whatever these archetypes are of like badass dudes. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to be as good as that guy is at baseball. I need to be a
So do
black
you think
belt
that
at
like those people were like informal docents to you essentially? You were looking up to these guys. Like who are you looking up to that you were trying to model after besides professional baseball players but like in your life or what?
just grandpa. That was just my grandpa.
Grandpa, just grandpa. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Everything else
great.
was like James Bond was socially a cool guy on
Yeah, yeah,
TV,
yeah.
right? And then like so watching like the sort of charming haha like I got you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I wasn't like that at all. So I would just think to myself, man, if I was an awesome baseball player, maybe it would be easier for me to be like that. But no, I wasn't really talkative or able to, I would say, open up about, any sort of vulnerabilities or whatever until I was way older. But that was only as a result of literally money. Like, it sounds funny,
Mm.
but I got myself a job at Nordstrom's selling clothes because that's how I was going to learn how to talk to people. I was like, well, I'm going to be here. I'm either going to eat or I'm going to starve. And if I learn how to talk to people and learn how to like sell, then I'll be able to have engaging conversations and then come up with this process of like, where I can share, they can share, I can create like safe spaces for them to share and put these like sort of negotiating tools together. And a lot of that just came from reading a lot of books and figuring things out. But I read all sorts of psychology books because I was like, there's something wrong with me. I have all these problems, can't sleep because I was an insomniac. Like, okay, I have all these problems. What do I do? So I'm like, well, I'll just read a psychology book. So then I was like, well, wait, I'll read a relationship book, and then I'll just be really good at relationships. Then I'll be like, I'll read a hitting book because it sort of worked. Like, I read a hitting book when I was 9, and then like in between the 9-year-old, 10-year-old season, and then at 10 years old, then I came out swinging and just like clobbered the ball, and then it was like, oh, everything made sense. It was Wade Boggs's The Techniques of Modern Hitting. So once I realized that I could read a book and actually process it like as an
Yeah.
athlete, and then figure out how to hold my hands and how to like drive the
Yeah, this
knob
is
with
the
our
visualization stuff that you were telling me about, right?
yeah, but it started like it starts with like understanding the concept of, let's say, like an elliptical acceleration. So when you're a batter, you have to have you don't swing in a straight line. You don't just go like it's not like boxing where you just throw a
Mm-hmm.
jab. You have to generate the power from here, and then you kind of like go this way, and then as you do it, you're extending. So you're like a figure skater. You're kind of wide, and then you tuck yourself in, and that helps you spin faster, and then you extend again with that momentum. And so you're kind of here, you're extended, you have some torque across your chest and stuff like that, and your rib cage, and then you start with your hips, and then everything kind of comes through, and then you accelerate that way. And understanding that like there's a sort of feel for where your hands are, and then where the ball needs to be as a result of that, like that timing. It's the same thing in tennis or golf, but it's understanding that you have to your hands are up, then they come through, and then they extend, and there's like this way of doing it. But most of the way people like work out, for instance, they do a push-up, and they're here, and then they extend, and then they're here and they extend.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not the way like control sports are played. Control sports are all twisting. Everything's twisting and timing and letting it go at the right time, whether that's like a javelin or golf or figure skating or hockey. Any of those things where you have that little bit of like wrist flick or ankle flick or whatever. That's really how you get, you have to learn how to do that. And
Yeah.
that, I guess, if I could do anything, if I could say that certain personality types have a certain type of like skill. I didn't have the big muscles. I never had the big muscles. It was my ability was like I could draw. So I could take I could draw like whiskers on a cat. And that was something that I guess that focus and that vision, I guess, to do that type of stuff is what helped me eventually get the most out of my baseball career, because I was able to make tiny adjustments on the ball to say, okay, I need to throw the ball here, 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 here. And each one of those things is going to create different levels of tumble or whatever on the ball.
I told you like one of the skill sets that I was able to hone and get good at, I think it was pattern recognition. And then we talked about like video games as a kid, and you said you were a big gamer and you're a Nintendo Power and stuff. And maybe just talk about that for a minute, because I thought that was an interesting insight, I think, into myself. And it seems like we share this, which is like pattern recognition.
Yeah. I think it's one of the reasons that people that are our age are sort of, I hate to say this because I don't want to give anybody the inkling thinking it's really easy. But when you're let's say day trading, right? You're looking at the chart, you're looking at the certain candles, the shape. You're looking at like, okay, how tall is the top versus how fat is the bottom, and like all these different things going on. And you're also looking at the relationship for volume, volatility, the arc of something, and it's very similar to watching Tetris, right? So in Tetris or some of these other like puzzle games, or the earlier games like the Starfighter, or I played a game called UN Squadron, where you're like flying a fighter plane and like there's like things coming out here. Galaga, any of that stuff, there's these patterns that happen, and you need to know like how fast you have to hit the button for the lasers to come out, and then they start to swirl, and then like you need to go right, then you need to go to the left. And so it's this sort of, it's almost like a mnemonic device. It's like it's assisting your memory in terms of watching something that's happening, and then you're looking at it and you're saying, oh, okay, I'm seeing this, I remember this part, this is the key for that. And that's the same way that you learn like a new racetrack. That's the same way you learn how to spot a liar. That's the same way you learn how to, like watch adjustments from the hitters or the pitchers or whatever like that you're facing against, or like maybe tennis, like you're seeing the ball come out of the serve a certain angle. A lot of those things, especially as a defender in sports, like you're seeing things and you're like, hey, okay, he does this cadence on his call, like before they do a running play, or I could see him kind of tense up a little bit before he does a passing play or whatever. So you start to look at this stuff and you start to say, oh, I'm seeing the table tilt this way. And it might be like 2 or 3 tenths of a second that you have to make that direct adjustment. But that 2 or 3 tenths of a second right before the play starts, that's when that's where you win.
It matters.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. So whether you're fighting or whatever, I mean, there's always like stories about guys that are like, oh, you always drop their head when they throw this type of punch or whatever. Yeah. And guys see that, and then they eventually walk in, and then bam, they pick it up, and then just like Mike Tyson's punch out, then that's when you hit the star button, and Little Mac.
That's right. Little Mac knocks the dude out. That's right. It's like the guy flashes right before he hits, Yeah.
Yep. He blinks.
Yeah. So we were trained as kids in the 80s. Like, I mean, honestly, at 3-4 years old, I had an Atari 2600, and I was playing Space Invaders and stuff. I mean, literally from 3 up. And I remember as I got older, my mom's like, all you do is play video games. What a waste of time. But maybe it wasn't a waste of time, Mom. Listen to what CJ saying.
Yeah,
exactly. My company that I sold, CJ, it was initially called Gamers Media too. We put ads on gaming websites. So like I was obsessed with games as a kid. I totally loved it.
Yeah, all I did was play baseball on video games as a kid, and I mean that was my primary thing. And my mom was always like, if all you do is play video games and baseball, you'd be the most boring person ever, and no awesome girls will want to date you. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to be awesome at baseball.
By the way, Mom, he married a Brazilian model, so I think it worked out.
Good advice though, because eventually I did have to sort of give the video games up and sort of go into something else, because I do think there's definitely an addiction to video games. Yeah, especially when you play the longer ones, like let's say Final Fantasy or whatever, which is like where you've got to play 20, 30, 40 hours consecutively to like really beat the game. It gets to be where you're like missing out on life because you're just sitting in the dark.
Well, those games, they came out when we got a little bit older. When we were younger, those console games, like you could beat them in one night. It would take me like maybe 7, 8, 10, 12 hours. I don't know about you, but I was obsessive compulsive. I would play that game until I beat it. I wouldn't put the cartridge down until I was done.
Get so angry. And then the biggest like jerk move that like my brother would do is one of us would be playing, the other one would be like, and then
my God, dude, you got to start all over.
And that was just instant fight.
There was times where I would be up all night playing it because I had it in my bedroom. My mom had a TV in my room, right? So I would play it all night, and then I would fall asleep playing it. I'd wake up in the morning and the TV's off. I'd shut the TV off. I would fall asleep, and then I would leave it on like all night, all day long while I'm in school. Come home so I could finish the game. My mom, I'll never forget this. It was Zelda, and that's like one of the most difficult games ever to beat, right? She fucking pulls it out. I was like, she was mad at me. I was like, no, it wasn't saved.
It's so many hearts saved up, Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I had this. I had to shoot. My sword was shooting. Like that was the deal. Yeah.
Were you entrepreneurial as a kid too, CJ?
Not really, but just like I would say, I wanted to save money so I could get stuff. Like I had a bicycle that I wanted. I got a GT Interceptor. And that was the thing that I really wanted. And so I saved up, and I saved up, and I saved up, and then I was doing the day trading stuff, or not day trading, really more range trading. So specifically SCHW, so Charles Schwab stock would range trade from like 20 to 30. It was always in this sort of like
a channel.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like in a channel forever. And sometimes it would go to like, like 27 and then back down to 24 and then up to 30 and then down to 21. So I literally would just buy the bottom and sell the top. I would literally be there like watching like the ticker go by and like looking at the newspaper and saying like, okay, this is what it did yesterday. This is the thing. And I would literally like, that was it. I traded one stock over and over and over again. But like when I started doing that, and then I'd be like late to school and they'd be like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, I had to do this trade. I remember like freshman year of high school, my geometry teacher was like, what are you talking about? Because I'd come in like all sweaty, like riding my bicycle, like, the Wicked Witch of the West. And, they would be like, why are you late? And I'm like, sorry, I had to execute this trade. My stockbroker just like took too long. But I mean, I literally made like, I don't know, $1,500 or something like that, like my first summer trading. And I was like, all right. I mean, I didn't think it was weird. I just was like, okay, this is my grandpa.
Well, your grandfather taught you. Yeah.
Yeah. And my mom thought it was the coolest thing ever. She was like, look at him like trading. He's like, look at my little son. She had all these friends and she'd be, look at CJ, make a muscle for like, I'm not that strong. She'd be like, look, he's got little muscles. And I'm like, we still have little muscles. And this is like weird. This is fucking child abuse, So it was always weird. But my mom like had such like, she was so clueless about sports, like rest her soul, because she died a couple years ago. But this is really funny. Yeah. Like I got hurt when I was like 23, 24 in the minor leagues. I had to get Tommy John surgery. And she's like, why get the surgery? Why not just throw right-handed? I was like, yo, what are you talking about? She's like, I know you can throw right-handed. I'm like, yeah, no, in fact, I can actually throw right-handed, like about 80 miles an hour. I said, wow. But second fact, I have no idea where it's going. And I'm going to be ambidextrous to the point that I can throw 80. But I literally, no one's going to take the guy that's like throwing 80, Mom. Like, I need to throw 95. Like, that's where the money is. And like, me being left-handed is a specialty thing. Like, that's a thing. So they're going to fix me. I'm going to come back. I'm going to throw 95. And she goes, I just don't know why, like, they don't just let you throw right-handed. I'm like, you know what? I'll just go play shortstop too. She's like, would they let you? I'm like, no, Mom, of course they won't let me play shortstop. So,
that's awesome. Do you remember the first time you used the internet? Like, do you remember your first experience?
Yeah, I remember using like Yahoo in the 90s, Napster, downloading music, BitTorrent, downloading movies.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember like bulletin boards. So it was like bulletin boards were like the first thing.
IRC. Yeah.
Yeah, and then AOL, like AIM, Instant Messenger. That was like kind of nascent, but I really got into the internet probably, I would say, like 2001, 2002. That's when I really got kind of hardcore.
Right after college. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's when I go to the minor leagues after 2001. Sure. So it was really the only way I could keep in touch with people, because it was actually cheaper to send like extensive emails than it was to stay on the phone. Because I was in like West Virginia or Georgia or something like that, and I'm calling and like roaming, and it's just like a mess. So it was just cheaper to have a laptop that I could just type away on. That was the easier way to stay in touch.
Which book has had the most impact on you?
Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah, I read it when I was a little kid. I read it when I was a kid. It was the first book that I really found that was a page turner. My mom was an extensive reader. My grandfather was an extensive reader. So I would always like rip books off out of their house and like just sit and read. And I remember I read Dracula in like the summertime as I don't know, maybe like a 7-year-old or something like that. And kind of weird to read Dracula as like such a young kid. But I was taken by the language. I just was like it was just so visual for me and so like interesting. And then it made me want to read everything. So the reason why I fell in love with reading was really because I read this classic book that was so descriptive and different and visual, because my imagination was just running absolutely amok at that point, that I was like, man, are there other books like this? And then it was like the whole door opened. So I think that literally, I would say like opened the whole literary door for me. But then as an athlete, I was just always looking for more. So I would say, probably some of the really early baseball books I read, or maybe Ken Revisa's book Heads Up Baseball. Although I read it when I was probably 13, and then I went back to it a couple times. But the thing I liked about that book the most is it called you out. It said, "What's your goal in baseball?" And I was like, "Whoa!" And it says, "Your career goal." Like, feel free. And there was a blank page, and I was like, "I want to play right field for the Dodgers and hit 300 home runs." Like, is that what I'm supposed to write? Like, I didn't even know, you know. But I was like, but then the next page said, "Go back and look at it again, and fill in the blanks. Like, how far do you think you can really go playing baseball?" And I was like, all right, win 200 games, save 400 games. Like, I don't know. Like, I wrote all these things. I was like, or. One of those three things. I was going to do one of those three things. And, you know, I played center field. I played pitcher, played first base. I played third base and shortstop and catcher on some teams just because I was such a good athlete. I could actually do it. But for me, it was all like this mental skill of challenging myself further and further and further. And there was always bigger kids. There was always stronger kids that threw harder, hit the ball farther.
Sure. But what made you believe I can be a professional athlete when there was guys that were your peers that were obviously better athletes, you said, than you were? So how did you believe that?
It wasn't better athletes. It was just bigger and stronger. So
okay.
When you see a kid that's like 5'9", 165 as an 11-year-old, you're like, damn, this kid's a tank. Okay.
Right.
And
he's just developing quicker. Right.
Yeah, he's just big. But then I would look at his swing and I'll be like, his swing does not look like any major league player's swing that I've ever seen. You know, so I would watch the swings and I would see how these kids were swinging and I'd be like, this kid's like, he's all wrong. Like his arms are barring out way back here and he's like sweeping. And so some of the really big kids, they're so strong that they just overpower the rules of the game at that age because the discrepancy in hormones and height and all that stuff is whatever. But as soon as that evens out, like, cause I was very steady. I was small, but as soon as I would gain like an inch here, an inch there, pause, an inch here, an inch there. It'd get a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, a little bit stronger. And it was doing stuff like I would do 100 push-ups a day, or I would say like, okay, I need to be able to do 10 pull-ups. So then if I could do 10 pull-ups, I'd be like, put on a backpack and do like 11, 12, and like keep trying to go. So I started lifting weights when I was a freshman in high school, you know, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, for whatever reason, I have strong legs. I can leg press. And then I'm like, I wonder if I could leg press like 500 pounds. And I'm like 600 pounds. And then it was like, that was the thing. Like I just kept, my legs kept getting stronger and stronger. And I probably lost a little bit of running speed as a result of focusing so much on my legs instead of running, like actually running.
Sure.
But, you know, I had really strong legs physically. And then eventually I learned how to get the rest of my body, you know, strong. But by the time I was basically like, you know, like a junior in college as a 20-year-old, then, you know, I was like actually strong, you know, and at that point I could throw 93 miles an hour. I could hit the ball 430, 450 feet with a wood bat. I could run okay, but it was more like I could jump and I was very
But I mean, like, honestly, bro, like we all think, oh, I'm going to go pro. So maybe not all of us think this, but like a lot of us think like I want to go pro, but there was something different here, right? There's something that you saw in yourself and maybe people around you saw. Like you did tell me that in high school, you transferred high school, I think your senior year, right? To a different school?
No. After my sophomore year.
Or your sophomore year, okay.
Year, after my freshman year, I transferred to go to the better high school. And
how did your friends feel about that? The best athlete on a team's out of here.
No, I wasn't though. I wasn't the best athlete. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I was athletic. Like I could skateboard, I could surf, I could hit a tennis ball, I could play ping pong. I was like well-rounded, but I was not outstanding in anything. Okay, so that's like the thing. But I would watch hitters and I would see that they would do something. And I would be like, oh, well, if I throw the pitch there, he has no chance. He's going to strike out. And then I'd be like, yeah. So I had this pattern recognition thing that I was able to really like just decode people. And then I was like, okay, now they have no chance. And that's literally like if I was able to do what I wanted to do, I tore people up, you know, and I threw like all kinds of, you know, I have all kinds of weird, like, you know, stories. Like one game in probably, it was after my senior year of high school, maybe after my freshman year of college, I'm not sure, probably my freshman year of college, I was pitching I was still young enough that I was able to pitch in like one of those, you know, 17 and 18-year-old leagues, but I was 18. I threw a no-hitter against a team in Chino, throwing only fastballs and knuckleballs the whole game. So imagine I felt like I was so far ahead of this team that I was playing against. I was like, I don't even need to throw curveballs, sliders, changeups, nothing. Literally knuckleballs and fastballs. They won't be able to hit me. I threw a no-hitter. And,
nice.
you know, but I didn't have this, but it was like, because it was in a summer league game, it was like there was no, there's no fanfare. Like I hit a walk-off grand slam to win a tournament in like, I don't know, maybe like a month before that, and there was no fanfare because it was just like some summer tournament, I wasn't going to like these perfect game showcases or anything. We didn't have them. We didn't like have an unlimited budget to just go all over the place. But when I was probably 13 or whatever, I was playing against all these teams, and I realized that there's tons of kids that are bigger and stronger than me. But then I'd play against a kid 2 years later when we're like 15, and he's a sophomore in high school, and I'm a sophomore in high school, and then suddenly he's not so big. His mustache is filled out a little bit more, but then he is not any taller, right? And so like I felt like, okay, well, if I just have this growth mindset, and then everybody was late bloomers in my family. Like my dad went to the Air Force and grew like 2 or 3 inches after he was done with college and done with the Air Force. So it was like I grew until I was probably 23, 24 years old.
Oh, wow.
It's just one of those things. I'm just like a slow, heavy turn, and that's just how I was. So I never had like that awkward gangly phase where I didn't know what to do with my body.
Yeah.
I was always like a skateboarder or a BMX guy or something. So I just had this kind of body control from playing lots of sports and being like medium at everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I was never like the fastest kid or the hardest thrower. None of that stuff. Never. Not
So your friends weren't upset when you left, or they were upset because you grew up playing together and they were like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and I think you told me you guys almost did it like in the middle of the night, so to speak, right? Like it was a kind of a
we had to right? We had to have these like weird clandestine meetings to say like if it's okay or not or whatever. But my dad moved into that district so I could go play there. But no, my this is the thing. My I didn't have friends. So it wasn't that hard. Like,
your teammates? No, for real?
Yeah, because most of the kids. I mean, like when I went to Edison High School. Yeah, well, no, it wasn't that. It was just like I didn't have friends. Like it was like my best friend was my next door neighbor, and he wanted to be a stunt man and a stand-up comic. He didn't want to be, he didn't want to play baseball. So like in the summertime, like I hung out with Brian Muntz. He was my best friend, and so like Brian Muntz and I would hang out. Like it wasn't like kids that I played baseball with. Kids I played baseball against were just marks. They were just people at the table I was trying to take their money. They were just dudes that I was trying to like say, hey, be on base so I can drive you in. And when I'm on base, like take a pitch so I can steal second. Like I did not care about like the relationships that I had.
You had a long-term goal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it was also because I played on so many teams at the same time. I was playing on this travel team and this travel and then like doing this weekend stuff and then like playing Sundays with like the Mexican kids and then like, playing on like this one scout league team that played on Wednesdays and this other scout league team that played on Thursdays. So like all I did was play baseball. And like by the time I got to maybe the new high school to Fountain Valley, then my best friend was a kid named Brandon Cox, and he was a catcher and he was a hitter. And so we would go like sneak out of class at lunch and we'd be like sprinting for the cage. And then we would get the cage unlocked and then get the balls all loaded in the machine. And then the other one would go to we would give each other the money. And one of us would go and get like the personal pizzas and the drinks and like run. And then we would like be eating, like chowing down, like while we're swinging, and then like trying to do anything because we did the math on this. We're like, hey, dude, if we get an extra 100 swings a day, like how much better will we be? Like if we get 100 swings, like it takes us this much time, and then we would have our baseball gear on because we'd have like our baseball shirt and our baseball shorts like in our backpack. We'd be like, like Superman fan. And then we'd go to fifth period Spanish class, and then we would like that's how we would dress to class, and everyone's like, why are you wearing PE clothes? I'm like, these are baseball clothes. Okay, baseball clothes, not PE class, okay? But that commitment is really that's all it was. It was just baseball. I'm going to make it. And if not, I'm literally going to die on the field.
And you really had this mindset on your own. Like it wasn't your parents pushing it, obviously, right? You said this today. So it was just your mindset to do it. It's very unique. Yeah.
Yeah,
because now you see all these helicopter parents where they're like constantly pushing their kids into doing these things. They all want their kids to be a pro, but it was really you that wanted it.
Yeah, because my dad didn't play baseball. Like he didn't play baseball at all. He played baseball. He played like little league, and that was it. And then he played basketball in high school, and that was his thing, But I was like, well, Dad, like you took that basketball thing as far as the Wilson family's going to take it. Like I'll take it from here on the baseball thing.
That's right. I think I'll pass on the basketball, Dad.
Yeah, like I'm like. No, can't do it. No, I loved playing basketball. I love watching basketball. This is during the Lakers era as a kid. You had Magic and Kareem and James Worthy and all these guys. They were great. They're a great team. But and I would watch them as a fan because I was like, I can't do that. I'm just going to sit back and just eat popcorn. But then when I watched baseball, I was like, Roger Clemens really likes throwing split fingers with 2 strikes. after he throws fastballs up and in to people. Maybe I should try that. And I'd be like, all right, I mean, some poor little league kids, I'm just like throwing up and in, like dusting them, and then, you know. And I just played the game really mean and really hard in that regard, because for me, it was the World Series. I was trying to be one of those guys, and you know, I got in trouble a couple times for playing too hard. You know, I got ejected from a game in Little League Little League All Stars, I guess, because I ran the first baseman over because there was like a weird throw. He like went up for it, and I just kind of just trucked him. I trucked the catcher one game, and I got in trouble for that. And like his dad was my brother's like pitch coach, so it was kind of like bad blood. You know, I felt bad for it, is what I'm trying to say. But that's the way I always played, and I played more like a hockey player in that regard because I felt like I had to. I wasn't bigger than anybody. I had to be meaner, craftier, smarter, sharper. You know, like more ahead, whatever it was. And then, you know, this is when you got guys like Pedro Martinez playing, and he's like 5'10", 185, and then Maddox is like 5'11", 190 or whatever. And Glavine, same thing. These are all like regular sized dudes at the top of the game. I was like, well, I don't have to be some Randy Johnson, you know, 100-mile-an-hour guy. I could be really good. I just have to be a good player. I don't have to be like a big guy.
And consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, and baseball allows you to do that, but most other things don't. So
you told me one time, you said that you visualized striking out Ken Griffey as a kid, and then eventually you were up against Ken Griffey and you fucking struck him out. Like, how amazing and surreal is that?
Yeah, it's weird because, you know, there's these generational players, obviously, that make it to the major leagues when they're very young. And so as a kid, you're able to, like, see them. And at one point, I mean, like, let me think about it this way, right? So in 1989, that 1989 Upper Deck rookie card that Ken Griffey Jr. had, like, I had that card when it came out brand new.
Yeah.
I got in a fist fight with a kid that lived down the street because he tried to steal it from me. Okay. So I was a huge Ken Griffey Jr. fan. Then in the early to mid 90s, Griffey's the best player in the world, right? Yeah. And I'm 15 years old. So he's like, I don't know, maybe 10 years older than I am. I'm not sure, something like that, right? He's not 20 years older than I am. So by the time he was, you know, towards the end of his career, I was at the very beginning of my career. And as a lefty, you know, I came in to face him when he was playing with the Reds. So I'll never forget, like, being so amped up, like 15 out of 10. I was like, it felt like I had like 4 Red Bulls. So I was like, Ken Griffey Jr. You know, and I think
awesome.
It was funny because everybody else, like, I think I pitched like an inning or whatever, and he was either like the other guys I was throwing 92, 93 against, and then Griffey comes up and I'm like 95, 96, 95, you know, and I just had like an extra gear that I didn't really know I had. But, you know, then it was really funny because then, like, it's a 3 or 4 game series, right? So he's playing right field for the Reds. And then, like, first game, I strike him out, you know, and I'm just like higher. I'm as high as Jerry Garcia at Woodstock. You can't even, like, forget, you know. And I'm just saying, like, emotionally, I'm like, ooh, because I've never had any of that stuff before in my life. But so then,
but just be clear, what do you mean? You never did any drugs in your whole life, right?
I've literally never.
You even told me in surgery you didn't even take any pain medicines.
After surgery, I don't take pain meds or anything like that. So I just try to woo-saw my way through it, Jay. With some Eastern philosophical, you know, mind strikes.
And you've had how many surgeries? Like 10 plus surgeries, right?
5 on my arm. 1 on my hand. I had mouth surgery on, like, one of my teeth was messed up in my palate, so they had to chisel it out. So then after that, I didn't take any pain meds after that.
No pain meds.
Unbelievable. Like 7 pretty legit surgeries.
What about alcohol? You drank alcohol or?
No, I've never even had a beer in my life. That's what I'm saying.
Never had a beer.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
The closest I get is like Listerine
and it's amazing because in baseball, particularly in the minors, right? Like, these guys are just getting shit faced all the time. No.
Exactly. Enemies of progress, Jay. That's the whole point. And when I saw guys doing that, I was like, go ahead. Like,
You're gonna be here forever in the minors, right?
Give me an opening, I'll take it. I'll take your job.
Yep.
I'll just leapfrog you, you know. And that was my whole job. I was like there to get ahead of everybody else, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't make you the most popular teammate. And it wasn't really until I became, I would say, like, a really established player. Probably not until I was, you know, maybe 28, 29, before I really was appreciating the team dynamic in professional ball. Now, in amateur ball, teammate situations were way better because a lot of people were more equal at that point. But when you have a dude driving like a Vanquish and another guy with like an H2 Hummer with like 24-inch chrome wheels, and then you're driving a diesel Mercedes, it's like really hard to like feel like they're on your level and you're on their level. Even if like you felt like, okay, well, I can strike this guy out or whatever. There's an element of like hazing and stuff that happens in the majors that I just really not a fan of. And because I didn't have any like social currency, I didn't drink, I didn't golf, like I didn't dip. There was nothing for me to like share with people besides, hey, I've got a really good idea for how to get that guy out. And they're like, fuck, man, all you do is talk about baseball. Like,
You're
like,
so
let's
focused.
go to the strip club. And I'm like, no. They're like, let's play poker on the plane. I'm like, no. I'm like, let's talk about baseball, guys. Let's watch some video. Figure out how to
geeking out, man.
Yeah, like maybe we could pick Johan Santana's pitches. Like maybe we could do it, you know? And they're like, shut up. So that's why the Rangers lost every year. It was like until they actually decided that they wanted to play, like focus on playing baseball and winning.
I would imagine Tom Brady's the same way, right? So
I don't know.
hear. That's what we hear. Yeah.
He did marry a Brazilian, so at least we share that. But, but I don't wear Ugg boots. I don't get down like that.
High school, All-State. What was your accolades in high school?
I made the all-county team in high school, and then I got mono my senior year. So it was always this. The volatility index was very high with me. I got hurt a lot. You know, I broke my back my freshman year of high school or freshman year of college when I was hitting like 480 or something like that, and I was like, I'm going to get drafted as a hitter. This is the best. And then I broke my back, and it took me a long time to recover from that. But I think that was from the mono and just being weak in general, and then trying to come back too soon. Because it was like end of senior year, I got mono, then I'm playing baseball again, and then you know that fall and everything like that, I started like getting these weird little like muscle pains and strains, and then you know about a third of the way through the season, I got what's called a spondylolisthesis, which is where you have like your vertebrae and one of them slides forward, and then the other one like slams down on these guys, you know, like that. So that was not a fun time. I had to wear a back brace for like 4.5 months. But I recovered. Everything was fine. And then the next year, sophomore year, because I watched a lot of baseball during that time, I would go to the games and scout. And I would say, okay, I'm watching the game from this angle. What can I learn, you know, from watching, from not being on the field and not seeing it stereoscopically? I got to watch it this way. I got to watch the whole game go sideways by me, like a movie. And I learned a lot more about the game. And then as I had like a rival player. For me, it's always been about having a rival player, someone I'm trying to outdo. When I was probably like 11, there was this kid named Andrew Rodriguez. He's a left-handed pitcher, left-handed hitter, played for the Royals, and I was in the Pirates in Seaview Little League. And he was my rival, I guess you would say, where I was always trying to beat him because we were the same size.
Does he know that, or is that like information? Did you ever talk
He was
about
just
that?
a really good player. He was just a really good player.
He's going to hear that someday and be like, man, I was the motivation for CJ.
Yeah, well, he should have. Well, he ended up having a spinoff in a very, very sad story as a result of not being straight edge, I guess, like I am.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like I'd be able to leave a lot of legal trouble and things like that. But that was very de jure in Huntington Beach. A lot of kids were doing drugs. A lot of kids were smoking weed. A lot of kids were drinking, and I just saw that as like I don't want to turn out like this. You know, I don't want to be one of these kids. Yeah, like a 7th grader died of an overdose when I was in middle school, right? So he overdosed on speed.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, this motherfucker ain't making it to the majors. Like, so, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to turn out like that. Pretty easy to see that. And because I had some substance abuse problems in my family, like seeing that, I was like, well, I just need to not turn into one of these people. That'll be okay. We talked about like the ACE score or whatever, right? So I saw enough bad things happen that I was like, I don't want to go down that door. So I'm just going to focus on this baseball thing and go forward as far as I can go. And if I don't make it all the way there, then like I'll figure out something else, because I knew I had, from an intellectual standpoint, the chance to like do something different. I could do kind of whatever. I just really wanted to play baseball because I thought lifestyle-wise.
Was there like a defining moment in your athletic career where you said to yourself, you know what, I actually wanted to do this. I believe I can do it, but now I absolutely know I can do it. Like, what age were you like, dude, it's definitely going to happen? Was it in college or was it in high school? Or when was there?
No, I would just say that I just kept making steady progress. So like I would set these things for myself. I remember like when I transferred, like my sophomore year, I hit a home run in like an inter-squad game, and I ran around the bases like this before I transferred. So that was like the last thing that people from that school remember me doing, is like running around the bases like I won the World Series. But that was like the first home run over the fence I'd hit in high school, you know, at that point, because the freshman year we didn't have fences, right? So, I would say that there was these little things that happened, and it came down to like, getting hits off particular players that were a particular level, or striking out guys that were a particular level, or stealing a base off a catcher that was a certain level of player, and things like that, And I would say maybe my sophomore year of college is when things really started to come together. That's when I started to have like in-game success that was really outsized. I was the state MVP, unanimous player of the year, like all the, awards. I did because I was a pitcher and a hitter, and I did everything and won a lot of games and stuff. So I got all the awards. And but it was because, in my opinion, it was because I had a rival. His name was Ben Francisco, and Ben Francisco was a really good outfielder that went to Cypress College. He ended up playing for the Phillies and the Indians and maybe the Pirates, I forget one other team. So he made it to the majors. But he was the guy. I literally wrote it down on a index card, a 5x7 index card, because he was all hyped. Like, oh, Ben Francisco is going to be the player of the year. He's only going to go to junior college for 1 year. Then he's going to get drafted. All this stuff. And so I was like, well, I better be better than that guy. I got to make up for last year. I got to pick up where I left off. And so I had an index card. I wrote his name. I said, I am better than Ben Francisco. I am the best player in the league. And I would literally look at it and do push-ups every day, 100 push-ups a day. And it's like these little quiet, this quiet focus, this sort of inner fire. It's like only someone that's been bullied can really do that. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't think someone that's had a dark life can have that level of
You need
focus.
some trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was like jail. I was like, okay, this is my way out of jail. Like, not that I had like some terrible upbringing, but I sort of imagined myself in like this.
Well, you got to create that for yourself, even if you don't have a terrible upbringing. Yeah.
Right. It was an imagination thing. Like, I was like, okay, this is just like that Van Damme movie, where he like has to fight his way out or whatever. Like, I would play with that intensity because for me, I was like, I literally want to rip someone's face off. So I couldn't, like, I totally understand the aggression that people have in football and hockey, but I would play baseball with that. But like dialing it in to like a smaller circle, like a laser, because I couldn't just be like, because people would just be like, all right, boop, and flick me away. But when I was able to channel all that rage or all that stuff into a small space, then I was able to make a lot of forward progress with myself. And I was able to practice deep into the unplausible zone. Like freshman year of high school, if I only got one hit in the game, I would sit there and make myself as punishment hit off the tee for 2 hours. My parents would go home. I'd be like, I'm riding my bike home. I'll see you guys later. Take all my other gear. I'm going to take my bat and my bat bag and my keys, and that's it. Take everything. I'll take my backpack, my cleats, all that, my glove, all that shit. I'm just gonna sit here and hit off the tee, hit off the tee, hit off the tee, and I would literally do that. And the coaches were like, "Dude, it's fine, man. You got to hit." And I'm like, "I should have had 2 hits. I should have had 3 hits." And I was like that always. That's just how I was. It's just addictive personality or whatever you want. Like
you were your biggest critic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone thought I was nuts. I mean, to be honest with you. Like, I'd be in practice, and for me, batting practice wasn't just a time to like just go swing and like work on my swing. It was like bottom of the 7th inning, 2 outs, Mariano Rivera's pitching. I need to drive this guy in, run around second base. Like single gives us the lead, tie game. And then I would like hit a ball in the left center or something like that, and I would be like, boom, And sometimes I wouldn't even acknowledge what was happening. Like, I was so out of it. I was so like in my own little. What was the Ben Stiller's movie? The one where he's like Walter Mitty. It was like Walter Mitty. Like, I was like, there was like polar bears everywhere, and like I was just imagining things. Like, it was like that. I was at this level where my visualization was so strong that I was trying to bring all of this reality into like an augmentation thing to make everything harder. So that when I would play in the game, I wasn't stressed out.
I got 2 kids that live across the street from me. My buddy's kids. They play baseball. If you can give any advice to these 2 kids, they love baseball, Rex and Ryder. What advice would you give them? I know these kids want to be professional baseball players someday. They talk about all the time. They play all year long like you did. What is the one thing you would say to these kids?
How old are they?
I believe, Ryder is 9, and I think Rex has got to be 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Really simple. However hard you can hit the ball today, you need to figure out a way to hit it harder next week. However hard you can throw the ball, however far you can throw the ball, you need to figure out a way to back that guy up 3 more feet between now and next Friday. I mean, it's the incremental gains that you make. It's increments. You're not going to go from throwing 60 to throwing 85 miles an hour. You go from 60 to 61, 59, 62, 60, 63, and there's like this creeping,
up and down.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I tried all the different stuff. Everything other than like taking extensive batting lessons or pitching lessons. I didn't really take a lot of pitching lessons. I did get like a little bit of a Gandalf situation when I was about 16. I met a guy named Bud Black, who's now the manager of the Rockies. He was a family friend because his kids went to school with my cousins down in San Diego. And my aunt introduced him the way a lot of people do. And they say, oh, my cousin or my nephew, whatever, is like great at baseball. You need to see him throw. Like, he wants to be a pitcher, da-da-da-da. And it's like eye roll, I'm sure. Because like everybody hears, and this kid's great, this kid's great, this kid's great. So then he goes, okay, I'll meet him and talk to him. And if he's serious, like maybe we'll do something. So he asked me what my goal is. And I'm like, I want to win 200 games in the major leagues. And he goes, huh, okay. Like a little bit better,
It's intense.
Goes,
yeah.
So then we go to his house. I don't have anything with me. And he goes, because he was a lefty, and he goes, grab a glove. And he's got a stack of gloves. And I just thought that was so cool that this dude had a stack of gloves. And he goes, let's play catch. And he had this Labrador named, I think, Charlie, this big fat Labrador. That was like the coolest dog ever. And so Buddy is like this very calm guy, like a really, like, you have no idea whether he could drop like a complete Will Ferrell line or he could drop like a JFK line, and you have no idea which one's coming next. And so he goes, okay, let's go in the backyard. Let's have a catch. I'm like, all right, was this like Field of Dreams? This dude just said, have a catch with me. So we're warming up or whatever. And he said, okay, I want to ask you a question. He goes, how do you focus on spinning the ball? And I was like, which pitch? And he goes, your fastball. I said, well, I mean, I'm trying to get it to move. He goes, you don't need to try to get it to move. He's like, it's going to move. He's like, see if you can throw it with like perfect backspin. I was like, all right. And I was like, then we just did like this drill where you basically just like a finger roll, like off the, and you just work on like throwing the ball with like perfect backspin. And he goes, okay, you get it. And I was like, what do I get? He goes, you did it. Like you just changed the entire spin axis. And I was like, okay, is that like a big deal? He goes, people can't do that. Like a lot of people can't do that. And I was like, okay. And then so we like back up a little bit. He goes, hit me in the chest. And I'm like, all right. He goes, hard. Like throw it through my glove. And I was like, this man woke up and chose violence today. Like I'm like, all right, bro. And I'm like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old or whatever. So I could probably throw, 82, 83 miles an hour at that point. And so then like we play catch for a little bit. And then I just remember him going, hey, you're going to do this. And I was like, you think so? And he goes, yep, you got it. You're good. You'll do it. He's like, here's the deal. You got to do this, this, and this. And I was like, all right. He goes, you got to be able to get in the strike zone and then throw to both sides of the strike zone. He's like, you need to work on that. He's like, don't just throw everything to one side. He goes, a lot of pitching coaches, they'll try to get you to do like one thing, do it really well. He's like, but you need to do everything. I was like, okay. He's like, focus on your spin. And then it became a thing. Like every time I warmed up, I would just focus on the spin and make sure the ball was coming out of my hand right. And once I got that going, then I would start adding like speed to the ball, add velocity, add effort. And just like these little tiny things, these little tiny little like thought processes about, oh, how is the ball spinning? And how can I tell? And then when I throw a curveball, does the spin look as white on the curveball as the fastball looks going the other direction? And so these little things over the years, I mean, he probably like gave me, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 one-on-ones where it was just us sitting there playing catch and go to like a park or something like that. But other times he would just like, we'd like throw a football around a little bit and just like talk about stuff. And then like he'd have me, I'd call him every once in a while.
And
but
this
I was
is,
always,
you said 15, 16, right? About 15, 16?
Yeah. So like probably like my junior year of high school, between sophomore and junior year of high school. And
there's
then,
a docent right there. I mean, that had to be instrumental. Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But it was funny because it was in such small doses that like I didn't want to. He at the time he was like just finishing his playing career. Then he went into scouting, and then he was in the front office with the Indians. And I didn't want to like bug him. This sounds so funny, but I'm like I didn't want to like make my problems his problems. But he said something to me one time, and this was so good, Jay. This is so good because I was always like, hey, like if I'm gonna have a girlfriend, she better be hot, right? Like that's the way it is. So he goes, listen, there's 3 B's, okay? I'm like, okay. He goes,
I know one of them. Good.
He goes, ball, books, and broads. You only get to be good at 2 of those things. I said, okay. He goes, you want to go to college? I said, well, I think it'll give me more time. I said, I'm little, it'll give me more time to grow. He goes, I agree. He's like, focus on going to college. Don't worry about the other stuff. He's like, take care of the books, take care of the broads when you're done with baseball. Take care of baseball and books while you're playing baseball. And then once you're done with college, it's like, whatever you want to do. I was like, okay, got it. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm not putting up with any crap. If like a girl tries to get me to like stop doing this practice thing, like don't practice so much or don't do this so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, like that was it. And so
we were talking about this earlier. I said my cousin, my cousin. Yeah, because same thing. He in college, he had this girl that was like distracting him, and he's like, dude, then she doesn't get it. She's not a part of the plan. That's it.
Right. Yeah, that was the thing. It's like that was for me. It was always more important to make it than it was for anything else. And, I think a lot of people, they look at it and they say, oh, make sure you enjoy yourself. I would hear this shit from my like coaches and stuff. They'd be like,
you got a whole life ahead of you, man.
Yeah. I'm like, don't forget to have fun. I've said, I'm in AA. What kind of fun do I want to have in AA? I want to get to the big leagues, man. Yeah. That's what I care about. And, and I was always very anti-authoritarian as a result of that, because people that would sort of like try to put rules on me. I mean, like we had this thing where you had to wear collared shirts, right? And you weren't allowed to have long hair. And like, I'm like, all right, well, what about these guys that are doing all this crap, like with their nightlife? I mean, you're going to give me a hard time for having long hair? Like, is that hair getting on anybody else? Like, is that hair like causing me to be late? Is that hair like forcing me to give up walks? Like, no. Like, let's talk about baseball, man. Like, let's make it about this.
Focus, man.
You want to police who I am, police these other guys for what they're doing. Because I'm not going to sit here and get like run over, like the bus isn't going to run me over because I'm trying to do all this stuff. So I was always like really combative about stuff. And it wasn't until I had like one person every couple of years that really kind of like, got it and tried to put me in there, because everybody wants to make you into like this robot because they don't know how to coach you. So they say, okay, well, we'll just make you this way. And then, at least then statistically you're fitting in. And I would be like, I don't care about fitting in. I'm trying to break the mold. I'm trying to do my own thing. But when you don't throw 100, like they don't want to put up with that. If you throw 100, you could straight up like punch your girlfriend in front of 10 people, and they'll be like, "Yeah, just get her out of here," And they did that. I saw them do that with prospects. And like there was these guys that had all this crazy crap happen in their life, crazy terrible things, and like I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm a Boy Scout, but like I want to wear long hair, and like that's a problem. Like what's like that's a problem. Like that's what we're talking about here.
You said to me, we've talked about this too. Like I went to high school, the same high school that Al Leiter and his brother Mark Leiter went to. Jeff Musselman went to my high school, which is kind of amazing that 3 professional baseball players came out of one high school in Bayville, New Jersey. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've asked you this many times, and I want you to hear your answer on record here. Do you think anybody can be a professional athlete, or do you think that there's a genetic capability to it? Like some people are just God-given ability, like, because a lot of people, let's just be honest, right? Everybody plays sports as a kid, and then when they see the people that are professional athletes, they say, well, they're just God-given ability. But you've told me you don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, it depends on the sport. I mean, like, you can't sit there and tell me that, like, if you don't golf, you're not going to be an awesome golfer. Like, I'm sorry, but like golf is the perfect example, because it requires no like speed, right? No size. Yeah. What I mean by that is there's no like prototype size, prototype speed, prototype body type. I mean, you got like Craig Stadler, and you've got
John Daly.
Yeah, and you've got Jim Furyk, and then you've got, like Lee Trevino, right? Like you've got all these different dudes that are all different sizes, and all these women that are all these different sizes and builds, and like some people are like this big, and some people are this big, and some people have like, they putt like with these things.
Sure.
So So professional sports, sure. There's lots of professional sports out there, right? There's a lot of Olympic sports out there. There's shooting, there's marathon running, there's table tennis, there's badminton, there's, I don't know, if it's on the Ocho, it's almost a sport, right? So then there's track and field, genetic.
Yeah.
NFL football, skill positions, wide receiver, running back, genetic. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Like at my physical peak, right? If you put all my stats together, I could have taken a snap as a running back or as a fullback, caught the ball, ran about 3 yards, and gotten obliterated, right? Like I could have done that. So technically, was I a professional athlete at that point? Yeah. And then I'm in the hospital with like 2 broken legs, right?
That's
I
not your
could run.
sport.
Yeah, like not my sport. Now, when I was bigger and older, like as a 25-year-old, then I could run and stuff. Then I could run like a 4.6. I think I ran a 4.62. I think we did a timed thing and I ran a 4.62.
Yeah.
And I was like super excited because I wasn't really traditionally fast, right?
Yeah.
I was 215 pounds. 215 pounds running a 4.62. Where am I playing in the NFL? Like, I don't know. Maybe special teams. I'm going to go tackle somebody. So, like, yes, could I have figured
Linebacker,
out?
maybe, but you're not a linebacker.
Yeah, but at 235, 240, right? Yeah, maybe I could have played linebacker if I'm running a 4.6, right? So I don't know. But either way, like, not good enough, right? Not good enough. Now, as a baseball player, I could have played first base. I could have played third base. I mean, if I'm a right-handed thrower, I could have played third base. I could have played first base. Now, I mean, like they got Max Muncy playing second base sometimes. Maybe I could have done that. But like you look at Robinson Cano, and him and I have like maybe like a similar body type in the sense that like like a big butt and like 6'1" or whatever. Like as opposed to like a little guy like Lindor who's like 5'10", like 180. Like that's a completely different body type than me or Robinson Cano. So like me 6'1", 215, 220. Like that's a certain body type, and like with the right lifting routine or whatever, yeah, I probably could have been 240 pounds if all I did was lift, all I did was eat protein and whatever. But that was going to be like this arc that I was never going to get to. So baseball for me was a deal that I could make it in. And I think like, yeah, there's certain kids that they don't have the ability to throw. They just, there's just something the way their shoulder works. They can't take their arm out and like do this with it without it going like doing this weird like thing. They're just not built for that. But if they're coached a certain way when they're really young and they can get like anatomically in good positions, then they can get the most out of themselves. Should they play hockey instead? Maybe, I don't know, maybe, right? But
so some parents are probably just steering their kid down the wrong path, right? I mean that could be the case too.
Yeah, I think most parents are just putting their kids in a sport that they want to play. They're not really looking at body type. They're not looking at any of that stuff. But there's also kids that walk away from sports because they just don't get into it after a while, And there's kids
burn
like
out too.
Yeah, there's kids that burn out. I mean, I mentored a kid that eventually quit, and I was really upset about that because I felt like he had more potential than I did. He had like a better natural arm action, and he had a long, lean body type. Pause. But he was taller than me. He could throw a little bit harder at the same age. Yeah, exactly. But he just didn't want to work the way I wanted to work. He could never make it like antagonistic enough where he was fighting against this other thing, right? And that was kind of the problem, I guess, is that I for me it was always me against everybody else, and that's the way sports is. It's you against your opponent. But some people don't want to be mean. They don't want to win, and they don't want someone else to feel bad. And I'm like, if they step on the field, this is pro sports. Like you're here to get clobbered. Yep. You're to clobber somebody because people are watching. So, I don't feel bad about all the games that I lost because I lost to major league athletes. Like, I feel stupid about giving up a home run to Carl Everett because he didn't even believe in dinosaurs. But, outside of that, I would say that most of the success and failure that I had was all warranted based on the fact that I just didn't have it that day. It was never because I don't know, didn't work or didn't prepare or something like that.
2001 draft, where were you and how did you react?
Well, I was the everything MVP the year before, and I didn't get drafted as a sophomore out of junior college. So I was too nervous my junior year to actually listen to the draft, which used to come on baseballamerica.com over the internet radio. And so as a result of that, I just went out in the backyard and started doing lawn work. Summertime, take the shirt off, work on the tan a little bit, push the mower around, try to make the diamond crisscross pattern in the backyard. And all of a sudden my mom and dad scream out of the house and like, "You got drafted! Oh my God! Oh, you got drafted!" And I was like, "Awesome! Okay, who was it?" And they're like, "The Rangers, 5th round." And I was like, "Whoa, 5th round! Holy crap! I'm gonna get a serious signing bonus." And then I was like, "Oh man, they want me to pitch. Oh damn it! It's American League. Crap, And I was like, "All right, well, I'll buy myself a cool car." That was the thing.
Which you bought a Porsche, right?
Yeah, I bought this was 2001 I got drafted. And then I had a Volvo at the time. I had a Volvo 850. That was my car. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to get myself a cool car, like an M3 or a Porsche. And then I settled on a Porsche, but I didn't get it until January 2003. So it's still another year and a half later. I got a condo in 2002. I bought a condo in Huntington Beach with my buddy who also got drafted from the same junior college team, and then my mom. The three of us split it like 40 grand each. And the rule between me and my buddy was whoever makes it to the big leagues first buys my mom out. But we put renters in there, and we're doing like a debt service thing. And it worked out really well. I eventually paid him out. He got 125 grand because I paid him out. My mom got like 125, 130 grand because I paid her out. And then, then I eventually kept the place and then kept renting it out and then sold it like 2 years ago or something like that.
You are $90 million in your career, but mostly that was in the back half of your career, right? Like 80% of the earnings were in the last 6 years. So like you told me that your contracts in the first several years were like year to year. So I would love to understand like that stress. I mean, the first year you got what, 300 and some $1,000, and then it was like 1.1 pre-tax, by the way. But I mean, you're basically one injury away from going to a 9-to-5 job at any given time. It must have felt like how stressful is that? Did you think about it?
No, you just think about going forward. At that point, I had already been through the back injury, Tommy John surgery, in the minors. So I wasn't really concerned with going backwards. I felt like the care was so much better at the major league level that as long as you get to that level, then a lot more is there for you. Plus, as you get older, you have more overuse injuries, which are sort of you can work with those a little bit, as opposed to like let's say the big injury. Mm-hmm. So as long as you survive that first like couple years, the minors or whatever. The earlier you get to the majors, the better, because then you're getting better recovery, better food, better money. You keep yourself in a better position. You don't have to compromise and eat peanut butter and jelly and stuff like that. But, I had roommates until I was 30 years old. I would go home in the off season and I had a roommate and, or 3 roommates or whatever. And I had friends that were outside of the sport. And that was the thing for me psychologically that helped the most, because then I could be myself with those guys. We could talk about music or movies or whatever. We could go water ballooning or go surfing or go ride motorcycles or just fun stuff. And then, during the season, it was just all about winning. And that's all it ever was. I think the big thing is you're always trying to advance yourself to get a better job on the team. So you started as a, middle reliever, worked my way up. I was like, okay, well, I want to be a closer. Then when I saw the writing on the wall that they didn't want me to be a closer because I was left-handed, I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll be a starter. And then, and that ended up working out pretty well for me. I really wish that I would have been a starter maybe 2 or 3 years earlier, like 2007, because then I think that I would have got a lot more out of my career, and I probably would have avoided some of the injuries that I got because I was getting overuse problems as a reliever. But I think overall, like my career worked out pretty well. I thought about playing one more year. I kind of wish I would have at some point, but it is what it is, and here I am, and 3 kids, 2 dogs. And 3 car dealerships later.
I was about to say 3 car dealerships.
Yeah, I mean, at one point I had like a bunch of stuff. I had like motorcycle stores and all this other stuff because I was trying to do everything to learn more about the industry. And what I learned was that motorcycle dealerships are a bad investment. That's the number one lesson. That's like
so the other thing about being a professional athlete is that you're getting paid in ordinary income. It's the highest tax bracket. And then you also get taxed when you go city to city, right? I mean, there's a lot of, there's city taxes, there's agents. You had to pay for, did you have an agent? Did you pay agent?
Yeah, you pay for agent and stuff. But I think like
what kind of percentage do these agents take, by the way? I'm just curious.
Like 4 or 5%. It's not as bad as like
it's like another tax. I mean, it's unbelievable. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but like, I mean, come on, dude. Like nothing's taking you past that state income tax in California. Like that's the number one thing.
That's insane.
So I probably, looking back on it, I had a choice to sign with a different team out of California or in California. But because I'm from California, I was like, okay, well, that'll probably be the best experience. And it turned out to be a good experience, for the most part.
Where was the other team? Where was the other team you could have went to?
I'd rather just not talk about it because it's like it sounds like I'm sour grapes about not signing with them or the way that they're or I'm like I'm dissing them for and that's why I didn't sign with them. But I would just say that I had a bigger offer, and if I could do it again, I might have.
Was it a tax-free state for income tax, state tax, or no?
It actually was, yes.
Oh, dude, you're crazy.
Well,
went from experiences. That's an expensive experience.
Yeah. But I mean, whatever, like quality of life, right? Like I do like living in California. I mean, I definitely wouldn't live in certain states, even though there's a lot of, cost advantages of living in those other places. Yeah. I do like the California lifestyle. I like the fact that it's, I don't know, I guess it's March, and I'm trying to think of the times that I saw snow this year on accident. Like,
television?
So yeah, like once I saw one day of snow, like in the last 365 days on accident. So, I can't really complain in that
Yeah.
regard, if that makes sense,
No, totally. I mean, it's not about that. It's just the economics that I think a lot of people don't understand, right? And
The
we're
economics suck for sure. You go to
yeah.
Cleveland, you're paying tax to play in Cleveland. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, is it really such a great city? Like that I have to pay extra to play in Cleveland? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't get extra tax like to go. I don't get like a Boston tax, you know what I mean? Because you pay the
Right.
Ohio tax and the Cleveland tax. And I'm like, what is this crap?
It's
Um,
unbelievable.
yeah, but here's the thing. It kept me hungry because it kept me like energetic towards other things, entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And, ultimately, I think coming out of the baseball experience, having that work everyday mindset has really been really good for the car business because it's kind of, it's kind of how the car business is.
And the car business wasn't necessarily because you wanted to make up for all the taxes. It was that you had a passion for the cars and you got into
Yeah,
the car racing business and you were like, well, I got to finance this hobby somehow. Isn't that kind of how that happened?
yeah. The racing thing is just like the worst. I mean, that is like, I
It's a
did
money
the
pit.
math on that one time. I was like, yo, I need something. I need like an offset or I need to stop because this is just, but I can't
Right.
stop because it's too fun. So, that's kind of how I looked at it. But I would say that, for me, I always looked at it like I'm interested in business. I'm interested in macroeconomics in the '07 to '09 period. When I was really coming into my own as an income thing, like the world was kind of crumbling down from like
Mm.
the downturn and stuff. And I got burned. I mean, like my condo that I had in Dallas at the time, like I bought it for this much and it's probably only worth this much now because it was
Mhm.
like, speculative asset or whatever at the time. It just, you get nuked on some stuff. I have gotten a lot of benefits from that over the years, obviously. But I would say that the number one thing is it made me understand that I'm going to have to work once I get out of baseball if I want to have a lifestyle at a certain level, right?
Mhm.
The car dealership business is cool because I do like the fact that I have a lot of places to put my effort, because I'm just wound up. And then it's also cool because there's an element of creativity, which is where you're able to differentiate yourself with the way that you build the cars. Because we personally order every single car that we get. So every Audi, every Porsche, every BMW, like we spec them out. So we have
That's
like
cool.
there's 3 people on the whole campus that get to spec out cars. Me, Sean, and Mike. Mike specs the BMWs. Sean specs the Audis. I spec the Porsches. I do all of it. And that's why I keep looking at my computer because I'm like, I do have to do 3 more before the end of the day. But that's something that I think is important. For me to get those creative juices out there because I have just like I feel like I have a lot of creativity. I'm inspired by a lot of stuff. I don't have as much time as I wish I did, but maybe that's the next phase. Is I finally get to let my creativity muscle stretch a little bit, and maybe I can do paintings or write my scripts or whatever it
We
is,
talked about that.
whatever I want to do. Yeah, exactly.
So, dude, share with me a baseball story, crazy baseball story that you haven't shared with anybody else. Give us a story.
That I
Locker
haven't
room,
shared with
something,
anybody
whatever.
else. Well, I get to
What about
do.
what about this one?
Yeah, mano no mas. So I had a teammate that allegedly, I have to say this, cut a guy's hand off in the Dominican Republic with a
Oh my
machete
god.
at a disco in a dispute over that other guy's girlfriend. So player starts trying to mac on homie's girl. Homie gets mad, punches player. Multiple punches are thrown against player. Player goes home, grabs a machete,
What the
and
fuck?
and decides, I think for show him who's boss. And I'm like, this is a bad idea. So he,
It's a bad idea.
I take motocicleta back to the club, and they tap me down, tap tap, but they don't check the Timberland boot. And I'm like, the what? And he goes, Timberland boot. And I'm like, okay, Timberland boots, got it. So he tucked the machete like into his boots
Unbelievable.
over, he put his jeans over it or whatever, and goes in there. I mean, I just picture this like doom 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 like this like Sean Paul video, and when the time does it gonna all of a sudden, you know what I mean? So he's like, I see the guys, and I pull out the knife, and they start throwing bottles at me, and then I go, ah! And then mano no mas. I mean, this is a very condensed version of it.
Oh my god.
He's telling us the story in Double A, and we're all like, cut a guy's hand off, like,
What
oh
the?
crap, like he's gonna kill us all.
Yeah,
So after
right.
that name, the major leaguers started calling him the Bone Collector But that particular player, he was a disaster. He got addicted to drugs. He had a whole big problem with everything. I mean, like it's a sad story. And he was eventually, there was like not a 30 for 30, but there was a sort of like what happened to him now. But like this guy was very creative, but he was off his rocker. You know, he was one of those like rock star type of people. And what I mean by that, like like one of those eccentric, like lead singer type people. I don't know how else to explain it, but people that like music will know what I mean. That he just wanted to like wear cool clothes and be weird. I believe he married a prostitute at one point. So usually, I would frown upon that. But also discourage. He got in trouble because he tried to go home in the All-Star break to discourage it, you know, with her, because he heard she was working again, and he got arrested. I mean, it's just like all this bad stuff that happened to this guy. But it would the funny stuff that would happen. He'd be on the plane, right? We would have a day game in Oakland, and day games in Oakland are at like 12:30 or something like that. They're super early. So we would stay in the city. We'd take the BART or the bus to the stadium, you know, and the way we would do it is you'd have to wear a suit. So you put on your suit, you take your luggage down to the lobby, give it to the bellman, put it with the baseball stuff, and then you get on the bus and go. And so we played the day game, right? We lost or whatever, won, doesn't matter. So now we're on a plane. Okay, so it's sequence, right? Wake up, put on your clothes, give the luggage to the guy, get on the bus, play the game, get on the bus, get on the next plane in the air. We're flying somewhere over a flyover state like Utah or something like that, and he's like this, and he goes, "Oh shit! Oh shit, man! Oh no, man!" We were like, "What happened?" And he goes, "My luggage in the closet." We're like, "Dude, that was 9 a.m. It's like 7 at night right now. What are you talking about?" He goes, "I forgot." You just wear a suit. You forgot. We played a game. At any point, you could have called somebody. They could have sent it. Like they could have put some dude on the BART. You could have given him $100, and he would have been fine. Like that would have been totally. And this guy was just like, so we'd be sitting there going like, "Oh my gosh!" And my roommate at the time was this guy named Cameron Lowe, and Cameron was from Northridge, and he's a really fun guy, 6'8". Okay, he had a Colombian red-tailed boa constrictor, like as a pet. Right. He liked to play guitar. He liked to play Guitar Hero and video games, and just an all-around interesting, fun guy from LA, right? And he was like, "Dude, we need to make like an R-rated like children's book about this guy. I call it The Adventures of Johnny Sunday instead of Curious George." So it's like Johnny Sunday forgets his suit, like Johnny Sunday smokes weed in Harlem, like Johnny Sunday, like all these things. And this guy was like, I was like, "How is this possible?" But he was a mess, and like one time they tried to send him down to the minors, and he got like completely obliterated. And he was like taking a lamp, you know, like how the lamps in the hotels that have like a really long cable, right, to get back to the wall. And he was taking it, he was like swinging it like this, like, no going back, no going back. And people were like, what's wrong with this guy? And he kept getting chances, and they're like, how are they bringing this guy back up to the majors? Like he's a disaster. But it was like, he's got a great changeup, you know?
Exactly.
This is like
he throws 100 miles an hour. Right.
Yeah, like 2005, 2006. So this is like pre-Twitter, right? There's no way this shit would have gone down with Twitter era. No way. You know, as soon as Twitter came out, they were like, "Whoa, people were going to report on this." Like, "Whoa, we need to train this guy."
Social media changes the game.
That, like, sweep stuff under the rug. I also had a teammate named Vicente Padilla who I thought was hilarious. And he liked to hit people on purpose. And then I also had a teammate named Mark Teixeira. Mark Teixeira hated getting hit. And he was like the big bopper. He was like a 30, 40 home run guy. So dudes were going to like pitch him tough, you know, regardless. But he would be like, "Throw that shit over the plate. Let's go." So Padilla smokes like Jorge Posada. We're in New York. And then, you know, somebody hits Teixeira, you know, and Teixeira got so pissed off. He like went after Padilla in the locker room. You know, he like after the inning, he like ran in there with a bat and he's like screaming at him like he's going to hit him with a bat or something like that. He's like, "This bullshit. You know, if you're not good enough to pitch, go home. Like, throw strikes. Stop hitting these guys." And he was like pissed at that because he was pissed that he got hit. And as a bullpen guy, I mean, I was kind of like, "Yo, man, hit him," because like I don't want him comfortable when I have to face him. So go ahead.
Exactly. That's awesome.
But yeah, Padilla was different. He was a different guy, but he was from Nicaragua, and the story that he told me, and that I heard from like one of his handlers or whatever, was there was a big like guerrilla war in Nicaragua, you know, when he was a kid. But he had thrown like 90 miles an hour in some sort of like youth tournament. So and a bunch of his brothers actually got killed like on both sides, like the rebels and the whoever was in there. So they literally did like a DMZ around his house. They did like a demilitarized zone. They're like, nobody recruit Padilla. Like let Vicente pitch because he's going to be a national treasure. And you know, so of course he does what everybody does is, you know, he gets the big contract, gets a Lamborghini, you know, does the whole thing, like lives large. He pitched for a really long time, but he negotiated his own contract when he was 15 years old. So the story that
he didn't have an agent. He did himself.
No, this is great, right? So he's in Nicaragua, and this is when the Diamondbacks were an expansion team. So they're going to sign him, and he shows up 10 minutes late. He rides his donkey, right? Like rides his donkey to the meeting at the local, like, you know, I don't know, whatever it's called, like the local bar or something like that, where they're doing this deal. And it's just him and the donkey, and then Buck Showalter, a translator, and Mark Connor, the pitching coach. And Padilla goes, "How much will you give me?" And they're like, "We're going to give you $5,000. He goes, "That is an acceptable amount. But what about my donkey? When I am gone, who takes care of my donkey?"
Get the fuck out of here.
This is his negotiating technique. He is so savvy as a 15-year-old to say, like, listen, I need to pay somebody to take care of my donkey, otherwise maybe they'll eat him. So I got to pay him. So they're like, okay, you know what? $7,500. He goes, $10,000. We're good. And then boom, $10,000. But this guy, like, he threw 97.
What about my donkey?
Yeah, what about my donkey? But so you have to imagine, like, this is what I talk about all the time, because this is when we're in Clubhouse to like change it, right?
Yeah.
People all the time say, yeah, but it's not that bad in America. It's not that bad. It's this, it's that, it's whatever. I said, yeah, but you don't understand, dude. America's only 300 million people. Yeah. Like, think about it, dude. There's people with dirt floors that have like a literally like a dictator running their country. You don't think they need Bitcoin? Like, you think that they trust the petrodollar in Venezuela after what's going on down there? You think that that's really going to be okay? You think that these other countries, Eastern Bloc countries, or maybe, you know, the printing press, the IMF countries, or maybe the Asian countries, do you think any of those people trust their governments? Like, what are you thinking, right? Africa, the continent, or is there a good ruler anywhere in the entire continent? Like, so, you know, like that whole thing about like Bitcoin, like, oh, like it's not really necessary. It might not be necessary if you live in Beverly Hills. It might not be necessary if you live in Fresno, California, or Tom's River.
Yeah, there's 8 billion people on the planet, though.
There's billions of other people that it is necessary because they have no other option. Like, there is no other fungible money. That's like, you know, it's like, you know, if you think that it's okay, you're wrong. So, does that make sense though? And so I think about that because I had teammates that came from those places. You know, I have a wife that came from one of those places. I've been to some of those places. So like, I think about it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? If I was living in XYZ city, country, wherever, different time zone, different, you know, hemisphere.
Yeah, totally.
You know, yeah, like it'd be more necessary. So it just makes it.
I want to get into Bitcoin. Before we do that, I have some more questions here that I wanted to get through. First of all, what is your superpower?
Memory. I would say memory, and I would say creativity. Just the ability to like meditate it to a level where I can reach like creative solutions to things that people might not see. I look at the entire landscape of what happens on a daily basis as an assembly of blocks, like Legos or Jenga or whatever you want to call it, like where you're constantly putting stuff together and things are constantly getting taken apart. There's structure and then there's chaos. And it's like looking at everything and saying, okay, how do I need everything to go? How can I line these things up and stack these things together to build something? The other thing is that I like to critically think to the point where I'll tell people, hey, listen, I just look at everything like it's a big ball of yarn that's tied in a knot. And at the end of the day, all your problems, it doesn't matter how many problems you have at the same time, they all have a straight line solution, right? You just have to uncover all the other stuff and unwind that yarn, unwind that knot. And eventually you see that a string is straight. It wants to go from A to B, you know? And so I think like from a rationalization standpoint or like a logic standpoint or whatever, I'm able to like, you know, take the pressure that's coming in and out and whatever. And I've obviously experienced a lot of it over the years. and I've had failures and stuff like that too, but I have to you have to keep tunneling forward no matter what the situation is, and try to get to the point where you can pull the string and say, oh, there it is. I see where I need to go now, because this is where I am and this is where I need to go. So I think it's just like a sort of like a really brutal self-evaluation thing.
What's your kryptonite?
Paperwork. I look around.
It's all over there.
Stacks of paper I got. This is a car that, we have this car coming in. This is an ordered car. Some guy, that wasn't dramatic enough. Let me do this. I got this mail. I don't know. I mean, like, I got my dry cleaner bill in there or something like that. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, paperwork is my kryptonite. I hate doing paperwork. I love when I have I would love to have a Lloyd, from Entourage, and just be like, Lloyd, paperwork. And
do the paperwork, Lloyd.
Paperwork, Lloyd. Okay, Ari. That would be the best thing for me. And when I did have that, I had a personal assistant.
Yeah.
Because I did the arbitrage, and I was like, okay, this guy, pay him X. Totally. He does this much stuff for me, and then I can just be like blinders on my career. And it worked out really well. I had a personal assistant for probably, I'd say 9 of the 12 years I played baseball. Wow. And that helped me multitask, or whatever you want to call it, doing charity work and having, doing personal appearances or whatever I had to do. It was easier to do that because I didn't have to go get my own dry cleaning. I didn't have to do the dishes. You know what I mean? I had a chef or somebody that would do that stuff for me. And it was worth it because it kept me healthier and better rested.
Focused too. Yeah. So you've obviously made it financially. Most people think to themselves, if I got to a point that you're at, but most people think to themselves, I'd be on a beach. Like, why are you running 3-car dealerships? Like, why are you still pushing forward? I mean, you got enough money. What you don't need more. So why do you do it?
I don't know. The stuff that I want to do with my life still is going to be, it's still ahead of me. There's still things that I want to do that aren't going to be free. There's things that I want to experience that are only going to happen if I make them. And no one's going to hand me those types of experiences and those types of things. I want to go race at Le Mans, and realistically, there's 2 ways of doing that. I've already missed the first window, which was be born into a super gnarly race car family. So the next thing is I have to be a really good race car driver and figure out a way to pay for it. So I would say that's a direct thing. I also think it's important to try to do something on a grand level to give back. And I'm at that stage right now where I've got a charity, and I've done a lot of charitable stuff for my charity and other people's charity. But the endowment that we have for our charity, we raised a couple $100,000 or whatever. I'd like it to be a couple $1 million, right?
Put a fucking Bitcoin in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Endow it with a Bitcoin. Yeah.
I've got some money set aside for my daughters and my son, but I would like that to be bigger. I'd like to have a scientific difference. That I'd like to be able to give a grant to a scientific research thing to do something. Those are the types of things I think about. It's not like
goalpost is moving away from what you thought it would be, right? It always does, because you have your goals expand and what you want.
Yeah. And then my goals turn into goals for other people as well. I want to see if I can get this person off the ground, or this cause off the ground, or whatever, things that I kind of believe in, and I think maybe if I was more successful person, I'd have better opportunities as a venture capitalist to seed and start those types of things. Because right now I just want to just spit all my ideas into a bucket and spill them out for people that have more money that can help me get those things going, or help solve problems with those ideas. But I'm only one person, and I'm definitely not a Chamath or a Jeff B or an Elon or a guy like that can just go So hopefully I get to that point in the next 10 years. That's the goal for me, my 10-year plan.
If you had to measure your ego, your pride, and your humility as a percentage of each, what would you give them?
I don't know if my pride, I would say my pride is probably, I've never been asked that before. I don't know. I'm kind of unprepared for that question. I'm very humble about my failures, my realities. Hey, I gave up a home run in the World Series, but I use my humility as a way to kick open the door to tell jokes, So maybe that's an ego thing, saying I can have fun about even my failures or whatever. But I would say that I do have pride in certain things that I do, and I have pride in saying that I earned a certain level of my success, as opposed to being born into it or whatever. I definitely have a big chip on my shoulder against anybody whose dad, ran a hedge fund or something like that, if that makes sense. I'd want to dunk on. There's this guy named Ryan, and if he ever sees this, he'll know I'm talking about him. He said, "You'll never be any good at racing because you're good at baseball, and people aren't allowed to be good at more than one thing."
He said that.
And I was like, okay, like, where did you go with your racing career, tough guy? I mean, so my goal is to get to the point where I have a level of success as a racer that I can look back and be like, hey, the same way I can with my Little League coach. Hey, remember when you told me I was never going to make it in racing? I was never going to do anything cool. I was never going to achieve a certain level. Here's my trophy at Le Mans. Like, suck it. So I'd say he'd be one, because he's one of the few people that just told me I wasn't going to ever make anything out of myself, and it was a waste of trying. That's one. I would say as a dealer, the guy that I ended up selling my McLaren dealership to in Scottsdale, he was such a bastard to deal with and just such a dishonest negotiator that I just love it. I love the fact that I'm selling Porsches and I don't have to deal with like all the crap that he has to deal with, with work anymore. But I know for a fact that like when like I'm seen doing all this race car stuff or doing all this Porsche stuff or whatever, that all these other people in the industry are like super grumbly about that. And I do actually like that. And then I would say that I do, it's really weird. I don't know if you ever encountered this. Do you ever have people that are like, hey, why would you want to have so many kids? Do you ever have that?
No. Well, yeah, no, some people make comments or like, oh, how many kids you have? Oh, 4 kids. Like, oh, really? Like they make that kind of comment, but they don't say, why did you have so many? But they kind of imply it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my thing is for those people, that are like, oh, you shouldn't have more than one kid because, vegan or whatever, for the cats, the cats and the ferrets, like the Prius drivers out there. Absolutely want to dunk on those people. Absolutely want to dunk on them. I want to be like, hey, not only am I successful, but I'm going to do a good thing. All my kids are going to be good people. Yeah. And we're all going to drive sports cars because we can. And like,
exactly.
And like, I'll give back to the environment, but I'm going to drive a sports car and I'm going to race. So don't give me a hard time while you're driving your Prius and you're smoking. Because if you're smoking,
you're not better than me, buddy.
Yeah, if you're smoking and you're drinking coffee every day, like you're polluting just as much and causing as much pollution with your Starbucks cup and your freaking cigarettes that I am in my car. Like, sorry, Yeah. So those people, the people that don't actually get it. This is why I can't really ever run for president, by the way, because I would just be like, I'd be on there on the pulpit and be like, really? And then I'd be like, so.
All right, let's talk Bitcoin, brother. Let's talk Bitcoin. All right, I want to get into Bitcoin. All right, so when did you first hear about Bitcoin? When did you first learn about Bitcoin? What year?
I probably heard about Bitcoin the first time. I'm just looking. It's at 53 right now, so let's timestamp that. 53 400.
Shit, yeah, let me look.
Yeah. So
we're moving, huh?
Moving, baby. So I first heard about Bitcoin probably in 2016 or 2017.
53.5.
And I was like, magic internet money, whatever. Like this is weird. I didn't really research it. A lot of times I'll hear about something and I'll be like, oh, let me look it up and see what the deal is. But that was at the time that I think they were just kind of coming out of the Silk Road deal, and that was sort of the vibe was like, hey, there's some bad shit happening, and because I'm really
exactly,
stuff, I mean, I'm a libertarian in the sense it's like, whatever you want to kill yourself doing some stuff, like fine, go ahead. Not for me. I don't want to associate with that type of stuff, right? So I think for me, like I had a little bit of a barrier to get over because I was trying to rectify like this whole gap, like I was like, I don't know. Like I like the idea because I was definitely a beneficiary of the fear economy that drove gold prices super high in 2008, 2009. I did really well at that period of time. I made a lot of, I think, good moves at that point for a self-taught investor. And when a lot of other people got wiped out because they let, some dude from Charles Schwab manage their money, I didn't do that, and as a result, I did not get wiped out. I did not lose any money in that crash.
I never let anybody touch it. Yep.
Yeah, and so it wasn't really until I got older that I saw like the value of like the collateralized lending and using that as a tool to before I really was like okay with giving somebody my access to my hard-earned money. Mm-hmm. But Bitcoin actually like really evolved for me in a method of seeing it in those terms. Okay, this is like a protectionist defensive asset for the future. This is a savings asset. And once I got to that point, I was like, oh, cool, it's volatile. I
What
can
year
dig
was
it.
that when you really started to have that like aha moment? When did you have the aha moment?
2018, 2018,
2018.
after it crashed, and then it kind of
Yep.
stayed flat after that and still stayed there because it didn't crash
Hmm.
and go to zero, right? It crashed and it was
No,
like
you
5,000,
could see their
4,000.
stability. Hmm.
Yeah, I was still doing stuff, and I was like, okay. And then that's when I started like really doing a lot of investigation. But for me, it was more like, okay, what are my on ramps? How am I going to trade? How am I going to do this if I'm going to do it? Because I'm going to have to do it myself. So I literally put like $3,000 on Coinbase, and was like, okay, let me see what to do, right? And then I was like, okay, let me do this, and I got into some shitcoinery and figured some stuff out, and like got my feet wet a little bit, but I didn't lose my ass. And I was like, okay, let me put another 2 grand in there. And then I had 5 grand, and I was like trading it
Yeah.
around, trading it around. And I was like, these fees fucking suck. Like, I need to get somewhere where there's not as many fees.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, let me figure this other thing out. So then I got a little bit more invested, and then I got into Binance US when eventually, and that's really when I was able to like really trade heavily, because then I was like, okay, cool, I'm able to really stay on top of the market. Still doing a lot of shit coining, still swing trading and still playing a lot of different stuff, diversifying or whatever. But honestly, it really wasn't until the last probably 6 months or so before I started like completely going from like a, let's say like a 70 10 10 10
Hmm.
ratio to like 98 and 2 ratio, you know what I mean, to the point where I was like, that's where my focus was,
Yeah.
with Bitcoin being the 98. And obviously like I like, because I see it as a protectionist kind of thing, I've done everything I could to you know interchange actual cash and divert what would have been stock investments or something like that into Bitcoin instead. To the point that I don't even really pay attention to the stock market anymore, other
Yeah.
than just being able to talk about it. I view it as this with the same sort of skepticism that I viewed it, 10 or 12 years ago. And when I got out of the market pretty much like completely in 2018, even though the market still had a lot of room to go up, I was just like, I don't like this. I don't like the market factors here. I don't like the
You're
implausibility
you're
of
you're completely out of the market. You're saying, right? Like
completely out of the stock market. Yeah,
no ETFs, nothing. You're done.
zero, zero.
Wow.
Yeah, done. So yeah, I just don't. Because it's like there's too many factors, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin has less factors.
So CJ, what is the most compelling aspect to Bitcoin to you?
Within reason, it's the same price everywhere at the same time, right? So if I go online and I'm looking at the price of Bitcoin, I can see it in a bunch of different places at the same time, moving around. It's like, $20, 20 tether, like whatever. It's moving around, right? It never stops. It's There's nobody that you can put a gun to their head and you can say turn it off. That's the biggest thing for me, right? There's nobody that
Totally
can be
decentralized.
manipulated into manipulating Bitcoin,
Hmm.
and the
What do they say?
inside.
Rules without rulers, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, rules without rulers. I like that. I like the fact that it's a participation based thing, where you can have a lot of people participating at a lot of different levels, and as a result of like I said, the market effect is just there constantly. So the presence, it just doesn't shut off, right? There's no circuit breakers. It just keeps going, which is
Hmm.
the good and the bad part of it at the same time, right?
Right.
So that's the top thing. The second thing is the scarcity deal. The
Yeah.
scarcity deal
Scarcity.
is the deal. That is the total deal. The deflationary Austrian economic type thing. That's the number one. Like
Just to be
I can
clear for those watching, there's only going to be 21 million bitcoins ever created ever, and it's a
correct.
scheduled release of it essentially, but through the mining.
Basically
Yeah.
900 a day for the next 3.5 years until
Hmm.
the next halving, which is sometime in 2024, and then it goes to 450 a day. And the thing is, like as the yoke breaks over the whole world and it gets coats around everything, it gets thinner, right? It gets thinner like the shirt stretches, right? It
Yeah.
stretches out, and then you can eventually see through it. And that's the thing. Like there's gonna be less and less to go around. But the good part about that network effect is it means that people with $100 can buy $100, right? Because you can't really participate in Berkshire Hathaway or Amazon as a traditional $100 investor in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Like let's say you sell something of value in a third world country. You could literally take that money, buy Bitcoin, and sit on it. As long as no one rips you off, you can keep that money and then just sit on it. Now the problem is, and this is the reality, there are tons and tons and tons of scammers in the Bitcoin world, right? Or the crypto
world.
Yeah. Crypto world. But there are people that are like, hey, do this, do that, do this, do that. And all of us have either lost money on shitcoins, lost money on ICOs, or lost money because somebody either, we traded somebody something and it didn't work out or whatever. And I'm not immune to that either. Like, I've definitely lost money on shitcoins. I've definitely lost money with people. I've had people rip me off, but that's in and out of the space, right? I had a dealership partner that embezzled money. You know what I mean? I had to sue him. Like, it's a thing. And then I had somebody else, like, I tried to buy a car and then he sold me a fake allocation. So then I was getting it for a customer. So then I had to pay the customer back, and I basically get asked out with nothing. And the customer got his money back and I get nothing. So I have to sue that guy, put him in jail. You know what I mean? It's just like, and it's like the problem is when you have a good reputation, that there's always people that are willing to attack it. Like, I had a neighbor that, wrote me a demand letter for $75,000 because their cat died. And, I'm like, your cat, I could get you a cheetah from Kenya with a shock collar on it, like, in a week from a Russian black market for less than $75,000. Like, you have an 11-year-old cat that couldn't get away from a dog. Like, I'm sorry, that's just the way it goes. It's like if I went in there and smashed.
How did you have to settle that, or did it just thrown out?
One of the reasons why, I mean, like, I can't even begin to rationalize the process that goes through with stuff like this, Sure, but you just become a target because you end up on Google, right? And so I feel like in a way, when I was willing to leave it all behind and move out of the country and do something else and take my gold with me and go some other place, I feel like that with Bitcoin again. And I think that we're kind of in that spot where people are willing to pack up and go. You might not have to pack up and go from the country, but you might definitely want to pack up and go from the city you're in or the state you're in or whatever. And I think that threat is a very real thing. And I think that's one of the things that I feel best about with Bitcoin is that I can pack it up and go. And hopefully not on a boat, because we all know what happens. There's always accidents on a boat.
A lot of people say, "Oh my God, I missed the boat. Look at the price." Speaking of boats, I missed the price. I'm sorry, missed the boat. You're still buying, right? We're both buying. We talk about it all the time, and people think it's too expensive.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, there's price action, which means there's always an intraday movement, right? So today, like, let's say it's over 53 right while we're recording this, but earlier today when I was checking, I know you checked before too.
49, yeah.
It was down in 50, 200, something like that. So, like, it moves, and if you pay attention to it, you'll see the patterns, you'll see the Tetris blocks flipping, and you're like, oh, you know what? This could be a good entry point. And you take a small piece there, you throw some cookies at it, and then flip it. And then, okay, you made 15% on that cookie position. Like, congrats. And like, it's small things, but I would rather keep stacking up and saving in that sense and taking it off the market. And I think that's really the more evolved thing versus like trying to be day trader and like shake it around. Because I read this thing on Twitter the other day. Someone said, selling your Bitcoin and trying to buy it back cheaper is like getting off the train and trying to run and beat it to the next station. You know what I mean?
It's a good point.
And I thought about that, and American HODL says, like, he's like, dude, the problem is people have activity bias. They're like, oh, I need to be busy. I need to be doing something. So you don't need to be doing something. He's like, sometimes you just need to do nothing. You just need to hold. Yeah. And, I have an idea for like a cartoon series, like an informal kind of educational cartoon series. And I want to have like him and I talking and having him tell like drunk history style stories about like, bro, come on, man. Like, Hercules would have been a sick hodler. Like, he had crazy grip strength. Like, it's
a good impression.
He's like, so you got Janet Yellen, who's basically Medusa. And then you've got, you've got me, who's basically HODL Hercules, through this whole thing. And then you've got Parabolic, who's, Jason, who's like this guy, and then do like a whole like Greek mythology and imagine like these really shitty voiceovers to like Wonder Woman style, characters. And I just think it would be hilarious. I just think it would be really hilarious.
How to be like, and they're so fucking wrong, and I'm right, and that's it.
Yeah, Like he's like, so I'm pushing this boulder up
best.
the hill, like to prevent the dam from flooding, Athens. And I'm like, dude, just hold on, bro. Like, stop worrying so much. Like, I have a moped, man. I'm fine. I don't need a car, So I think, and everybody comes to it in different ways and different majors. But honestly, like part of my thing was spite because I had this guy that was like, oh, this legendary trader or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let me see what this does. And I got smoked. Like he's actually in jail right now. And he got me, man. Like I got fucking conned. And I'm like, whatever. I'm going to make up for it. And so that was really what got me into the idea for wanting to trade. Now, the thing is, like, there's no time machines. You can't undo anything. And it's really hard to make up for stuff as well. So you just have to say, okay, what's the game now? Like, how do I get to the next level? How do I assess the field? And then how do we do it? And that's, I think, that fallibility or that impermanence is really what leads me to believe that I can use it as another asset in the portfolio, as I have this really big business. And that's
you're telling me you're not 99% like HODL?
No, definitely not. Maybe in like
what percentage are you? Would you say?
Well, I mean, yeah, the dealership stuff is just such a bigger piece of the pie. At the end of the day,
true. I mean, you're locked up on that, so
yeah. It's like I'm trying to think of the right way to say it without doxing myself. But the
Scaramucci gave a number. I was surprised. He said 15%. I was like, really? He says, well, actually, it's 13%. It dropped this week.
Well, it's up today. You should text him.
Yeah, you're probably at like 20 now.
Yeah, and honestly, it has. It depends on how it goes. Now, I will say, like, versus what I make, what my salary is in a year, I definitely have a magnitude more in Bitcoin than I do make on an annual basis. If that makes sense,
totally,
like by a big wide margin. But definitely not as much as like my car dealerships are worth or something like that. Just because
that's I see that as like that's totally illiquid, and we talked about this. If you could have done it again and you would have known back then, you would have just probably done that. I mean,
I would have just
made
bought
more
cars.
sense.
I would have just bought sick collectible
That's true
cars.
too.
And then as I went to sell them, I would have sold, let's say, every once in a while, sold one for Bitcoin, and then I'd just be day trading or whatever. I probably would have got into the same thing because it's just how I am. And then I probably would have got to the same place, but just with more available cash, and then made bigger. Like I probably would have bought a lot more last year in the big dip, because I was in pretty heavy before the dip, and then obviously it evened out. I mean, for me, from where I was at, and then my faith grew a lot after I said, you know what, I need this to go well, and I do believe that the universe is gonna I do believe that there are some fundamental factors here that the universe is going to conspire to lead a lot of the faithful on this March dip or the April dip or whatever you want to call it. The people that bought at that point were rewarded, and it didn't have to be a lot of money, right? Like if you would have bought one Bitcoin at the bottom for $4,000, that obviously would have paid off. Like we're at 53 today, right? So what's that factor in now? So even if you were in at 10 or 12 before, and you had one Bitcoin at 10 or 12 before, and you bought one at the bottom, well, then you have two, and your cost basis is like 6, and now it's at 50 something. So you're like, best investor ever. So, I think sometimes the percentage basis is a very difficult thing to say, like, oh,
over time, it'll probably be 99% of your net worth. I mean, it will just keep growing.
The best thing is Matt Odell, like, tweeting out, like, hey, Zuck, I hope you're going to do okay, man. Like, good luck with your company. It looks like it's going downhill. Because he posted these graphs on Twitter that it's like down 99% against Bitcoin in the last 5 years or something like that.
That's funny.
It's. I mean,
sell Facebook so you can buy Bitcoin, Zuck.
Yeah, Zuck, what an idiot.
What are you doing, man?
Exactly.
What's this Libra shit you're talking about?
Well, it's called Diem now, like per diem.
They changed it. Yeah. What's your favorite Bitcoin book?
I don't have one yet because I haven't finished any books yet. So you just got me. I just made a huge order on Amazon. I ordered like 10 Bitcoin books. Okay, yeah. We're talking about.
By the way, just if anybody goes on Clubhouse, we have the digital gold club now.
I haven't gotten that one yet, so that'll be the next one I get. But I've got about 6 or 7 books that I've ordered in the last couple of days that I've been reading a little bit. But the way I read is very weird. Like I skim over the chapters, and then I got this from Malcolm Gladwell. Like I read one of his books and I was like, I don't even know why I read that. That was stupid. I should have just read the first 2 chapters. All the information was front loaded. I didn't need the other 9 chapters.
The time suck.
Yeah. So I would say that for me, the biggest thing is like listening to podcasts while I'm driving and
Hmm.
listening to these different people that have written books. So listening to the Safadine Orange Pill, podcast with Max Kaiser. That one was great. Listening to Preston talk to Zach from BlockFi, listening to God, who was it? Odell and Scaramucci, your interview with Scaramucci, listening to the Ross Stevens Sailor thing. I mean, I get
That
more
one
out of
was
it.
great, man. Ross
Yeah,
and Sailor, that was unbelievable. I love that
yeah.
one.
I listened to it like 2 or 3 times, and
Hmm.
I send it to people, and I'm like, guys, just listen to this. If you.
Yeah.
And so as I'm sending these things out now, like I'm getting these more people. The Orange Pill thing, it helps with like the Fold app. Like I send someone like the Fold app, and I'm like, hey, download this. You can spin the wheel, maybe win some Bitcoin. Like I don't know. You come across casually like that, but when you're like, dude, you
Yeah.
need to sign up for this thing and do this and do that, it's just like it's easier. I've probably orange pilled 40 people at work so far out of like the 100+ people that work here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all happy because they all got in around like I would say between 15 and 30. So everybody is very happy about that. And I
The
have a WhatsApp.
15s are going to be safe. Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah,
In terms
I
of
have
like drawdown. Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff that I send people. I send people stuff. We have a group that I send to everybody. So I'm the funnel. So I'm reading all this stuff all the time and dumping it in there on them. But yeah, I don't know. I think at some point maybe um, I'll have to get out there and tell people more about it and what I think about it. Because the thing is, like, I'm already doxxed, right? You can Google me. You can see like what my pre-tax
Same
earnings
here.
were this fall. So it's like, fuck it. I might as well give it a shot. Might as well put it out
Yeah.
there.
What's your price prediction in 5 years and 10 years? Bitcoin. What's your price prediction?
Bitcoin in 5 years, so the year 2026, I see it over a million. I'll say 1.35 million,
One plus.
whatever. 10 years, 10 years, I see it at 5 million. I think that's and before HODL says, "Why so bearish, bro?"
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think the thing that we have to factor in, okay, is one thing that you and I were talking about offline before we got on was how the wealth is distributed around the
Hmm.
world, right? So the
Yeah.
wealth is distributed with it's like an upside down. It's like an ice cream sundae, right? There's this big blob of money, and there's a very thin shell of like a cup holding it, and the cup is like everybody, and the blob is like the money that the elites control. But what happens is with time that ice cream melts, right, and it becomes more evenly distributed, and it kind of absorbs more into the cup or the waffle cone or whatever you want to call it. And there's billions of people out there that don't have it, and if they all get a little bit of it, then it's going to suck so much liquidity out of the market from that. Because you have to factor that the people that are getting into it now, they're trying to buy Bitcoin that's being sold in the market, right?
Hmm.
Like on a daily basis, like distributed. So they're not buying Bitcoin that's they're not mining Bitcoin, right? They're not getting big chunks of it. They're getting little like fish. They're getting little
Hmm.
crispy bits of it as it's becoming available, as they have the available cash to do it. So displacing those dollars that they would be spending on Jordans or sunglasses or ancillary stuff that they don't necessarily need. If you look at it in that regard, if you're taking your $20 t-shirt money, you're getting Bitcoin instead or something like that. That's what creates this network effect where it's going to spread really wide, and that really wide thing is going to suck the liquidity out of the daily volume at some point. And then there's certain exchanges they're going to literally run out of Bitcoin, and that's what we're starting
Yeah.
to see the daily the volume being held, like the actual on exchange availability is dropping because
Yeah.
people are buying it and taking it off. So as the big people buy and take it off,
They're going to
and
cold storage. It's just so they,
yeah,
right? Everybody's taking
the
it out.
little
Yeah.
yeah, and the little people start coming from the bottom to start to bite off little tiny pieces. Piranhas can eat more than a shark can.
Yeah.
If you have enough of them, and that's just the way to
Yeah.
look at it. There are these countries full of people that have bad political situations, and if each of them come up with like literally $100 American worth,
Yeah.
and then you have 3 million people, bam, $300 million is gone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
hundred million dollars worth is gone. It's just gone. Like it's just, and then that's absorbed into their system, and then it gets redistributed from there. But the way that the waves and everything works is that you have this smashing effect of the big person coming in and pulling the shoreline down, right? But then what happens is there's like a surge that follows that, right? And I think there's always more people coming to it the first time. There's people that are selling, there's people that are moving to a cheaper place. I mean, think about all the people that relocated in the last 12 months from a more expensive place to a less expensive place.
Yeah.
And if their earnings stayed anywhere near the same, that means that they have more investable income now. And so if you see that little bit of investable income, a little tiny, if 10% of that investable income,
and then you scale that, right? Yeah, to the number of people.
That. And you're talking a million people spending $100.
And then I was going to say, and then a friend of mine, ad tech friend of mine, I was just telling you, I was having a conversation with him the other day, or yesterday actually, and he was like, I said, it's going to go to $1 million plus, and probably in this cycle, if not going into the next cycle. They say maybe not during this cycle. I think definitely in the next cycle, and he says that's like $20 trillion. He's like, you see $20 trillion coming into Bitcoin? And I was like, you don't need $20 trillion to come into Bitcoin for it to go to $20 trillion. So why don't you discuss that? Because I think a lot of people don't understand how the price movement of it works. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, without like putting fancy graphics together, what I would say is like a mental model, right? If you have a bunch of bullets, okay, and then there's a box of bullets for sale, like, if you have a bunch of bullets, you're not needing those bullets today, right? So you might buy something just to store it, just to keep it. And you don't necessarily turn right back around and put those back in the market. And so as these big players are taking the market effect off, like when Tesla bought, what is like 15,000 coin or something like that? He bought like 15,000.
1.5 billion, whatever it was at the time. Per price.
Right. So let's say he bought 35,000. Yeah, like whatever it is, right? There's only 900 a day that are getting pushed out there at the best case in the mining world, right? But then like on Coinbase, like the Coinbase daily trading volume is like, or Coinbase Pro or whatever, is like 24,000 Bitcoin being traded a day, right? So you have these like the BlackRock type people, right, are going to trade. It's all totally. Trading. Like
all the hedge funds and stuff, yeah.
JP Morgan, like any of those investment banks, they're not doing it the same way Mass Mutual is. Mass Mutual is taking it off the market. Tesla is taking it off the market. So you have these like treasury things that are grabbing it, and that's reducing the available supply for like months. And so then what's happening is it's pushing forward the supply, meaning it's pushing the price action forward because you only have so much, let's say 24,000 Bitcoin Coinbase Pro worldwide, right? Which is like $1 billion or something like that. So there's $1 billion of trading volume or $1.2 billion of trading volume for Coinbase Pro. And then like Binance, like those are like the two like really, really big ones, right? There's a couple other ones that are like, 10,000 to 15,000 Bitcoin per day or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is that there's billions of dollars being traded a day of Bitcoin, but let's say 40% of that, I don't know, maybe some random number, is just professional traders, just like the stock market, right? The less experienced people are going to buy it and hold it. And when you see that buy it and hold it thing like happening, it's just going to be like more violent, and it's just going to shake because there's the big people that are taking their pieces, right? And they're leaving. They're just like, hey, I'm out of here. Fun party.
It's going cold storage. Yep.
I know. And then so the daily volume then for that same volatility index to happen is going to be less daily volume because the numbers are going to get spread out. The limit orders are going to spread out. The more action there is, the more liquidity there is, Bitcoin liquidity, not dollars, but Bitcoin availability, then the more compressed the price action is, okay? Because that means there's so much available that it doesn't really, like you're just everyone's just sort of scooping off the top and the bottom of the limit orders that are out there. But as you see those spreads start to increase, that's when you can have the really big V's in the candle, because you'll see like there's not a lot of support underneath that number because no people aren't in those positions, right? Whether it's like a different trading pair like BTC ETH or BTC USDC or USDT or whatever, and the indicators that you have in the different markets, right? Because at different times of the day and everything like that, like it's always happening. So there's not like global attention turns on, global attention turns off. It's just global attention shifts and it just keeps kind of rolling. And when you have that constant motion and you have people constantly taking money out of the market at a bigger clip than it's going in, then what happens is that wheel has to spin faster to service all those trades. And eventually that wheel starts to get bigger, like the spin starts to get bigger. So you have like, what used to be back when trading was like, let's say $10,000 was sort of like the mean average for like a 60 or 90-day period. Now it's like that average is much bigger, right? That change between 52 to 44 to 58 to 39, and you just see this huge swing happening. This is the cycle. This is what people are talking about, the super cycle. It's like at some point, like, Apollo 13 is going to go around the moon and then catapult out of orbit because there's not going to be anybody. There's no sell orders anymore. Does that make sense? So the less sell orders, that means that
they're hodling. Everybody's just going to hold. Yeah.
Yeah. Your $100 now is covering like a bigger spread. So instead of having like 1,000 orders for like $100 spread, you're going to have 500 orders for $100 spread. And then you're going to, or whatever it is. And you're just going to see this stratification spreading out. And as it spreads out, then the price swings are pretty big. And that's what happened in 2017. And you look at the numbers. I mean, the retracements, it goes from like 1,200 to 400 back to back up. And that type of stuff, we've seen it happen a little bit. But the reason why the drop flattens out is because it's like Sailor, like he's there with these hands.
Well, he's huge for this, right now in this movement. Yeah, he's been big.
But the other people are doing it too. And the Asian companies that are buying right now, the Austrian guy or the Finnish guy or whatever that bought recently, there's like these stories coming out of, so-and-so bought 5 million, so-and-so bought 10 million, so-and-so bought this. That stuff is going to be
just headline driven right now. It's just all these new headlines, just push. Yeah.
But we're not hearing about it until after it happens, but we're seeing it. If you're in the market, you're watching it every day.
Like right now, that price movement that we just saw, I looked at that chart when you brought it up. I'm just bringing it up right now. So, dude, that's a spike, man. I mean, we went from, early morning, Monday, 3:40 in the morning, and then it went all the way up and it rode up to 7 p.m. and then it dipped. And then literally 8 to 9, you saw a price movement. That's a big jump, right? So that's purchasing. That's real money coming in. That's a movement. That's real.
Yeah. And it went all the way up. And it went all the way up. And look at this. At one point, it was over. It went up to 53.8. That's in the last hour.
Yeah. When you go to the 1 hour chart, it moved up quite a bit.
Yeah. So I think that's the other thing too that's important for that pattern recognition thing. Is a lot of people are always asking, hey, when should I get in? And I'm like, just pay attention to the market. And when you see a drop happen, anything over 2% in a day, just try it.
Buy some.
Throw $100 at it. If you're like if this is like your first thing, because it might go down another couple bucks, but then put in $50 more.
That was another question I was going to ask. Like, what, for the average retail investor, like what percentage allocation or how should they buy? Like for the regular retail average person, like what do you think they should be doing to ease their way into Bitcoin and get comfortable with it?
I don't believe in the YOLO thing. Okay, I don't believe in that. I understand that there's always a time bias that says like, okay, if you get in now, then you're better off because it could be twice as
statistically it's proven that you'll do better on a lump sum, but that's not psychological. That you don't have the temperament if it drops, and it does drop.
I don't believe that. Okay, so what I do believe is that people only have a fixed amount of money that they're comfortable investing in and saving, right? Because they have bills they have to pay and they have stuff they've got to do, so they can't necessarily just throw a bunch of money at something and just like and be psychologically okay after. So what I talk to people about is like a 20-20, and then like a 10-10-10-10-10. So basically what you do is you put in 20 right now, YOLO. Okay, 20%
percentage.
YOLO.
You're saying,
yeah, 20% YOLO. If you have, let's say, you have $1,000, right? Put in 200 now, and then you're in. Then you're going to pay attention because now your eyes are on it. Then you keep another 200 ready to go in case you do see that price action, and you can average out that first purchase. Then from there, you just need to make regular purchases of 10% of that, whatever that is. And I think, or 5% or whatever. But you need to get to the point where you deploy a certain amount of capital.
I agree with you.
With that. Because, listen, this is the price, right? It does this.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, like it's just all over
totally.
the place, right? So if you're paying attention, right, and you can buy it at an 8% dip, right, then cool, right, great. So if you have some dry powder to put that 20 or 30% down, again, after putting 20% in already, then you're going to feel better about yourself. And then as it starts to come back up, you might even throw your 10% and another 10% right at it again. And then you might not do anything for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? But if the last, like, let's say 45 or 60 days has shown us anything, it's that there will be opportunities to get back in.
I mean, it dropped to 43 the other night, I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah. But the thing is, people say stuff like, I want it to drop so I can go back in. It's like, yo, where were you? Did you get in? Like I got back in. Did you get back in?
You got to have limit orders. You got to put your limit orders in.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why everybody that's always like, oh, should I do Coinbase? And I'm like, well, listen, if you want to just hit the button and put in $20 or whatever, that's fine. I said, but if you actually want to take a strategy here, get on an exchange where you can actually set up like a grid limit where you can put in like random numbers and then you can just grid them. So you can say, okay, if the price does this, it was here a couple weeks ago. I'll put some money in for that. You know what? Maybe it even goes below that. And it just, hey, both of them got picked up, right? If you take that $1,000 and you spread it, you could make, I don't know, let's say 50 limit orders at $20 each, right? And that's kind of more my mentality, and that's how I've kind of switched. And I keep my activity bias, healthy because I'm feeding it so I can stay aware. Because I don't want to be blasé and be head in the sand and be like, what do you mean Bitcoin went to 30 grand? Oh man, it was at 55. I wasn't even paying attention.
I was sleeping.
Yeah, shit. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So I always want to have some ready just in case. But also, I might need something. So it's good to have something in an exchange that's cash that you can do something else with, in case Bitcoin does run away and you're like, you know what, it's fine. It's up a ton. I'm fine. I don't need this extra.
You're making
cash
money. You have some already. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll put some cash in and pay off this other bill that I was waiting for or whatever, because that might be better for your life at that point. And that's where it's hard because, like Tina says this all the time. He's like, don't tell people how to invest. You don't know what their life is about. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know if someone has a bill that they've been putting off, a medical bill, a car payment. I don't know. Right. So, but it's like, I know that people do have bills. And I think that's why it's hard to just YOLO into something, because then if you do YOLO into it, then you shouldn't even look at it for 6 months. Does that make sense? Like if you put all of it in now and you're like, that's it, I went all in. It's like, okay, then don't look at it anymore, because your life will be better for it. Look at it in 6 months and, call a friend, phone a friend. But you can't put any more back in. You put it all in, right? So the only reason to pay attention to it is if you're going to be putting more in as you go, or if you're going to be trying to take some out. But I think it's more about putting stuff in. And then, then coming up with ways to debate people on why the DeFi tokens are basically not necessary.
Do any of your former professional athletes or current professional athlete friends have Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm on this Facebook group for like former athletes, and a lot of them are into it. And I've talked to a lot of them off Clubhouse after they've been in the audience of Clubhouse and stuff like that. I'm like, guys, you need to be doing this. And so many of them are like, yeah, but Doge. And I'm like, listen, after you get wrecked in Doge, we'll come back. We'll talk about it. So
Doge. Come on, Elon, stop talking about Doge.
Yeah. So
confusing all the pro athletes.
There's a lot of pro athletes that are like that are very active in retirement, and they have a lot of energy and they have that work ethic. And so they see day trading and stuff as a job that they can do. I mean, if they have pattern recognition or analytical tools, they're going to give it a shot, and they might do well, they might not do well. But I'm not a degenerate gambler, so there's only so much degenerate gambling type attitude that I'm going to take towards something like this. And I'm looking at this as a very much more of like a Omaha Oracle sense, and just saying, hey, listen, I need to hold on to this, and I need to make it work and protect it as much as possible. And that's going to be the nest egg. My financial advisor, I was on the phone with him today, and he's like, hey, sell like 25%. It's up. You're doing great. You've done great with it. Just sell 25%. I'm like, yeah, but what's the point? Because then I'm going to have to pay capital gains tax. And he's like, yeah, but that's just how it goes. Like, he's like, you'll sleep better at night. I'm like, I won't actually. I would rather just like work harder at work, and flip more cars, and then just do that. I'd rather do that to try to make more money, because I know that that's something I have a little bit more control over, as opposed to selling something. Because I said, dude, if I sell it today and it goes to 200, I'm going to be apoplectic. I'll be beyond rage. I'll be in a state of rage beyond words. And I don't want to do that to my wife or my kids or myself. I don't want to live like that. So I'm going to try to. This is
your karmic gravity theory coming in here now.
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to try to hang on to things, and that's part of the thing too, is by putting out the positive vibes of spreading the idea that, hey, maybe you guys should get out there and get into this. Maybe you should look at it. Maybe you should think about it. And instead of wasting money on this, like, invest money in this, and I think that's the way I look at it. So,
we spend a lot of, I met you on Clubhouse and became friends there, and we spend a lot of time there. We're evangelizing Bitcoin to the masses. Like, why do you want to do that? Like, what's here we go. Professional athletes, retires, he owns 3 car dealerships, Brazilian model, 3 kids. What the fuck you doing on Clubhouse for 10 hours a day?
Because no one else is going to do it. Like, the government's not helping anybody. Everybody has this whole like, oh, the government's going to help me. When? When have they told the truth? When have they ever told the truth? Like, when is that going to happen? I'm waiting. Change my mind. Like, I'm like the guy. I'm like that meme. Like, government's not going to come help you. Change my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do it yourself. Like, it's not the people that say stuff like, oh, it's too hard. I don't understand it. And it's like, okay, talk to me about why is Tesla a good company to invest in? They're not profitable, right?
Yep. 1,200. Well, it's gone down a bit, but a 1,200 PE ratio. I mean, what are we doing?
The build quality is not great, right? I mean, let's be real. Build quality is not great. It's like it's because they have a person, and this is what the problem is with society. That is like, if you can attribute something to a person, then it's almost like people are like willing to let that cult of personality dictate how they act, you know, and then they fall for that. And it's Steve Jobs is the same way, you know. And I think that, like, yeah, there's something to be said about these people that are like successful or whatever, because they're, you know, they're like they're drivers, right? And I understand that. I understand the people that are the Roger Penske's and the Rockefellers, and like these people that are like literally driving an industry forward or driving a country forward with initiatives and stuff like that. But I don't really think that, like why did Bill Gates just recently buy like 400,000 acres of farmland? Like, why is he now all of a sudden like do you think there's not a financial play there? Like, what is he doing? Why is he doing
exactly
that?
Yeah, why?
Like, what's he farming? Like, why is he buying farmland? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then who's he buying it from? Who's selling it to him? You know, like, what's the cycle here? So I don't know. I just don't trust. I don't trust the global elites in that regard. Even if like someone would say like, oh yeah, well, you're a global elite. You made all this money. Like, I go to work every day. I employ people. Like, I have a job. Like, you could show up.
You got like 150 people working for you. It's crazy.
Yeah, like 138, 142 or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not like flying around on private jets and shit like that. Like, I'm not untouchable. I'm not in my ski lodge like drinking hot cocoa in Jackson Hole. I'm not like gallivanting around. I work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a dad. But I want to make sure that my kids actually understand it. So like I have a 5-year-old, so we talk about it. You know, I got her like a little book. You know, I read it to you.
That's awesome. Where did you? Yeah, where's that?
Yeah. So I got this on Amazon. I bought it for, I don't know, what was it, like $10 or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I'm like, $10. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You know, like, I mean, at this point, I'm pricing everything in Bitcoin. Like, okay, so it cost me a couple Satoshis that I could have bought more Bitcoin, but maybe it prevents my daughter from blowing it. You know what I mean? So
right.
There you go.
Tesla bought Bitcoin, put it on the balance sheet. Are you going to do that with your company?
As much as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. What I'm doing is I'm laying the tracks down now. So the CFO is reviewing a lot of the different potential. Like, I made some propositions and said, hey, if we do this, that, or the other. So you know, seeing if there's anything we can do with that. But it all has to do with the success of the business. If the business is successful, we'll be able to be more flexible. You know, and we could take, you know, retain earnings or whatever and apply it towards that as a hedge.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like I said, the same reason I thought gold was a good buy back in 2008, 2009. The same reason why I think Bitcoin's a great buy now is just because I feel like there's a storm coming against the dollar, and as a result of that, commodities. And I'm in an international company, right? In the sense that all these businesses that I'm attached to now are having to source things from around the world. You know, rare earth metals, German parts, Canadian parts, Italian parts, Spanish parts, Chinese parts, Japanese parts. We got to deal with, you know, like all kinds of resources and commoditization of these things, whether it's tires. I mean, like, the price of tires could go up because rubber's harder to make. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that could happen. And you know, how many other levers can you pull as a business owner to protect yourself from those, you know, to insure yourself from a more expensive future? That's really the question.
I got a question for you on Tesla, since we brought up Tesla. We've talked about this before on Clubhouse, and
Cybertruck's terrible. Don't ask the next question.
No, not Cybertruck. No, they're autonomous cars. Because I said, oh, what about autonomous? And you had a whole worldview that I had not heard, because Elon's out there talking about autonomous and saying we have all this data. Actually, I shouldn't say he does. Kathy Woods is the one that says it. Kathy Wood is always saying they have all this data. They have 30 million miles, and the next, you know, autonomous vehicles like thousands of miles of data. And your perspective on that is what with the autonomous?
I think that it'll be easier to make autonomous airplanes and electric vertical takeoff vehicles like electric helicopters and stuff like that. It'll be easier to do autonomous, like George Jetson cars, than it will be to do cars. Because the problem is that cars are such a legacy system with legacy infrastructure. Can you actually imagine what the cost would be to roll out a smart grid for cars, like on a national scale? Like maybe a city, like maybe Kansas City downtown, they could do it. You know what I mean? But like for buses or something like that. But the thing is that these processors, the amount of money that they've got to put on one of these cars to make it viable, it just isn't viable. It's like a $200,000 or $300,000 array you got to put on a car, and then it still only functions like below 35 miles an hour. So like, what's the trade-off there? Like that's
but this is a big reason why people are buying the Tesla stock. They think we're going fully autonomous, and you're going to have this like Uber taxi thing monetizing your car payments and stuff.
No,
like
that's garbage. That is straight hot garbage. Because who the fuck's charging the car? It's an electric car. Who the fuck is charging the car that's driving all day? Like when is it charging? Teslas take hours to charge. This whole thing of like, well, I'm going to rent it out, and then I'm going to like anonymize it, and then it's just going to just drive around or autonomize it.
When you wake up, it's ready for you to go, and the battery's dead.
No, it's not going to happen. Like you just can't plausibly think that you're going to be able to rent your car out, because the cost of doing those miles on the consumables of the car, like the brakes and the tires and the bumpers and everything that gets, and like the fart smell, like someone else is farting in the car. You know,
the sex smell in the back seat.
Somebody else eats Thai food and then they barf in the back seat, and no one registers that.
Terrible idea.
There's no barf sensor. It's just like this is so stupid. It's such a pie in the sky idea that has zero practicality, and that's why it's not going to work. It would be better if they said, hey, listen, we're doing these electric semi trucks, and they're going to have like 4 times the battery capacity of like the Model S ludicrous mode or whatever, because we can do that, because it's already a heavy vehicle, so who cares? I'm actually more interested in Rivian and what Rivian's doing, because I think their truck actually kind of looks cool, and I think it's a truck, so it doesn't have to be like super dynamic and goes.
It doesn't look like it belongs on the moon.
Well, it doesn't look like a 6-year-old built it on Minecraft. Okay, so
exactly. That's a great point.
That's the first thing. Okay, the Cybertruck. But like, but these other companies that are actually car companies, like Audi and BMW and Mercedes and Porsche and Lexus and Toyota, they're actual car companies that have like actually been building quality cars for decades. Okay, if not 100 years. They know how to build cars better than Tesla knows how to build cars. They don't have the hype, because they don't have like a dude, right? But if Porsche had like a dude, oh my god, if they had a dude, and the guy was like, hey, auf Wiedersehen, everybody. We are going to take off into Porsche. Like, if they had that guy and he had the charisma and maybe like the Botox thing going on, like, I like SpaceX.
Are you saying Elon has Botox?
I'm a bigger fan of Elon for SpaceX than I am for Tesla. Right? Totally. And that's not because I'm a car guy. I don't think Teslas are engaging at all. I don't think they're important cars. You know?
But you were also telling me that you thought that the human reaction time was better, and they're statistically proven that there's more accidents with autonomous cars than with human driving. And I looked up the study. You were right, and I was really surprised by that.
This is what they don't tell you, though, Jay. Is they don't tell you at what speed those incidents are happening, because like let's say people crashing at high speeds is much less frequent than autonomous vehicles crashing at high speeds, because people are programmed, and as you like have this self-preservation instinct that like a 16-year-old kid doesn't get on, they're not really able to drive fast because they have a crappy car, right? Whereas you give somebody like a Model S and you just like let them drive it and they go as fast as they want. This is the other problem, right? That you have these like this speed situation that the human brain can parallel process and hyperthread. So you can like be paying attention peripherally to like all this stuff happening, because you have like almost like a quantum computer in your head. Like you're able to solve complex equations and you have experience. That experience begets more experience, but you're basically allowing a bunch of toddlers, which would be the autonomous cars, in terms of how little they actually know in the car itself. Those cars are basically like toddlers driving way too fast. Now, if toddlers are driving bumper cars and everything's made out of foam, then yeah, like whatever, like people aren't going to get run over, no one's going to die. But because they're not fundamentally changing the safety of the car, you know, it's not making road travel any safer. This is my big thing that I tell people, like this whole thing about faster and heavier and bigger and faster and heavier and bigger, like that's not actually solving anything. Like if we really wanted to make like all cars safe, we'd build like Nerf cars, you know, that couldn't go more than 30 miles an hour, like Fiat Jollies, like made out of foam. and when you crash into each other, it'd be like, whoa, hey,
well, foam just explodes in the car instead of an airbag.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be actually safe. Now, it'd be stupid, right? Because not everybody needs that. I would rather have I mean, we're going to get to this point that some of these companies are burning billions of dollars on this technology, and then the electric taxi, like air taxi thing, is going to come out, and it's going to be like, don't need you anymore. Like that's how everyone's going to fly, you know? Because if you have to go, like, let's say your trip's like a 30-minute road trip, right? Yeah. You're going to take the air taxi. It's going to take 12 minutes, right? And then there's no traffic in the sky, and because the way air traffic control works, you have another layer. You have vertical dimensions that you can create, and if it's all autonomous, it's all just like they just like stack everything. Yeah, like the Jetsons, and it's way easier. Now, I'm not saying it's going to make it easier for people to drive, but because not everybody's like smart enough to drive, like fly a plane or a helicopter, but that's how it's going to work, because the price on that type of technology is going to come down at to a level that it's affordable. So you could buy, like, let's say $100,000 air taxi at some point. And if you can do that, or you can split one with a couple people, because your trips are 10 minutes, right? So that's going to make it like completely different, to the point where Boeing and Porsche actually made a partnership that they're going to do jump jets together.
Wow.
So there's going to be like a Porsche design Boeing mini jet, and that's going to be like a future, like we're talking like 15 years from now, that's going to be a thing. So like Honda made the Honda jet, there's going to be something even smaller and more like performance oriented for, like, let's say the 300-mile commute, if that makes sense. And that's what Boeing and Porsche are working on right now.
Let me ask you this last question. Apple, $200 billion on the balance sheet. Do you think they're going to buy Bitcoin? And if so, how much, and what kind of impact will that have?
I don't think they're going to buy Bitcoin. And let me tell you why. I think that they're going to, this is hard for me to say, because I'm parroting this, but someone told me the other day that they've already got their car, all the kinks worked out on their car, that they're working out they're working the car thing out right now, and they're producing the cars, and they're testing the cars and all this other stuff. And that's where they're spending their money right now, because they're going to try to unseat Tesla as the Silicon Valley car company or whatever themselves. And they're going to try to go to war with Tesla in that regard. Because I think that's where they want to take the fight. I don't think they want to take the fight to Bitcoin. I don't think they want to really get involved with Bitcoin. I think their thought process is that they're a $1 trillion company, a $2 trillion company. Anyways, if they add cars, they'll be a $4 or $5 trillion company pretty soon, because they're going to wipe out a couple car companies.
Yeah, Bitcoin's not going to push it there. Right, yeah.
What's that?
I said Bitcoin's not going to push it to 4 trillion. No, yeah.
Right. So they're more able to scale a technology up. And then what they're also going to do is, with this, they got the Apple Card, credit card thing now, they're probably going to end up buying one of these other banks at some point and doing what Facebook's trying to do, which is get involved in the payment system, so that Apple is really the brand that you are. I mean, remember,
so they'll have like a stable coin. They're going to create a stable coin, you think?
I think they're more likely to create a stable coin.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. 5 years from now. Yeah. 5 years from now, I think Apple's more likely to be running a stable coin, using their credit card system and having their own car, than they are to have, let's say, some significant, obviously they have enough money to do whatever, but like the thought process that they would buy $10 billion worth of Bitcoin or some crazy amount like that, I see them doing the car thing instead.
We have seen them on Clubhouse, and the corporate treasury folks have been sitting in our rooms. We've seen them, and it's like, why are they there? I mean, maybe they're exploring and thinking about the stuff, or just trying to learn. I don't know. They have been listening to us.
But just remember that just because you work for a big company like Apple doesn't mean you're a robot. Like, you're going to have your own
it doesn't mean they told them to go there either. He just could be out of his own curiosity.
Right. I mean, those guys might just be interested in, because they see these people's names. They're like, oh, I want to talk to Lamar about rap music. Like could be anything. You know what I mean? I
like Lamar because he always asked about rappers.
Yeah.
And he says pause all the time. What does that mean, pause?
Pause. I'm trying to get pause into the vernacular here at work, but we're not all the way there yet. Yeah, we're getting there. But
Hey, listen, I really, really appreciate all the time you've given me. We've been on here for over 2.5 hours. It's like earlier today, we talked for like 3 fucking hours. So you and I could just talk forever. We probably lost 99% of the audience at this point.
You're going to have to split this into like 3 parts, I guess.
Oh, no. What I'm going to do is a full release, and then I'm just going to do like clips, and I'll release that over time. You know, that's the best way to do it.
And then the next one, we're going to do book reviews. So then I'm going to read the Book of Satoshi and,
Digital Gold.
You read Digital Gold, and we'll come back to it.
What we should do is the club that I created, Digital Gold on Clubhouse. We should bring some of your and we'll do like private rooms, right? We'll bring some of your athlete friends over, and we'll have like HODL in there and stuff, and we'll keep it small, but we can try to orange pill some of these guys.
Yeah, what I really want to do is I want to get out to spring training and talk to some of the guys when they're all kind of in one place.
Yeah, totally.
This year, so I have a couple more weeks before I can do that, and then see what happens. But I think we're in for a very rocky road, and I think that's the misconception, is that because people say, oh, it's going to go up. Yes, it will, but it'll be it's not just going to go whee, and there's no such thing as a smooth ramp in cryptocurrency, right? So I just think that this is the opposite of that, and I think as long as everybody has their seatbelts on and their tray tables fastened and they're they're upright.
People see this, right? I go like that.
Yep.
Right, I can't even say it, and it's like they just see this line that goes straight up, and they're like, it's going to keep doing that forever, and it's like it's not a logarithmic chart or anything like that. But the other one to look at is this is also funny. I was just showing my dad this the other day. I told you I talked to my dad about it, and my mom, and let me show you this.
Yeah, market cap's back over $1 trillion now.
He's like, I don't believe in the stock market, blah blah blah, and I'm like, this is the stock market as I see it. If you can see that,
yep,
right,
yep.
So the way I see that stock market, the way I see this chart, this is how I see it. Starts here, goes there. Goes there, and to me, it's a fucking straight line. you got to look at this like that's over 30 years right there, right? That's the Dow. It's like I don't see this, I see this, or in your case,
yeah.
Way, right?
I have something for you, Jay. I want you to think about this, right? Let's talk about the concept of infinity really quick. Okay. Are you familiar with the concept of infinity?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So the universe, right?
Yep.
Really quick. Did you know that you're actually at the center of the universe?
Okay.
Because technically speaking, if it's infinity, there is no end in any direction,
There's no
means
beginning.
That you are the center, right? So your perspective is 100% valid because you are in the center of the universe by definition, because there is no end in either direction, right?
Yeah.
So if people talk about this like having perspective, it's important to understand where you actually stand, right? And it's like you have your own perspective because you're taking it from a very step back perspective, right? You're saying like, let's go really long term. You've been alive since 1980 and now it's 2021.
79.
Yeah. So for the last 41 years, like you've been watching things, right?
Yeah.
As a result of that, okay, you have your eyes open a certain width, okay? You have a certain memory in there that you've remembered these things that happened. You remember when the Dow Jones broke 10,000. You remember the savings and loan scandal. You remember the Y2K. You remember the I would say the
housing crisis.
The housing crisis meltdown, right? You remember like, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. You remember all these things, right? And so when someone says the government and the Fed and the dollars and you think of all these things, and then you're able to like distill it all, like I said earlier with the strings, to say, here's one string, is the beginning and is the end, right? It's going in a direction, and you just see the direction. Because if you're taking one step at a time, it doesn't matter how rocky the road is. You take the step that's in front of you, and that's it. And that's what we have to do on a daily basis, on a spiritual level, is take the step that's in front of us, do the thing we need to do, keep moving, keep going forward, keep moving, keep going. And that's so important, and so few people get it. Like so few people get that, because it's like this.
Well, they're worried about the what's coming next. Like they're worried about what's happening in 6 months or 2 days, and that doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a long-term approach.
And the argument of like, oh, but I can't buy coffee with it right now. Like, I'm sorry, it just performs better than everything else. Does it need to do anything else? It's like, what else does it have to do? Like, oh, it doesn't assemble little like titanium robots for you on your desk. I'm sorry. That's not what it's for. Get a MakerBot. Like, go get one of those. Get some titanium. Like, learn how to CAD program. Do it yourself. Yeah. You know? But people want to, like the lady the other day, and I forget what her name was.
It's delayed gratification, you know?
Right. But this lady gets in there and she's like, oh, I don't want to have to learn about it. I don't want to have to think about it. I just want the benefits. And I was like, All right, well, like, go sit down in seat number 16C, buckle up, and throw your $1,000 at the front, and like just see what happens. So like, there you
Yeah.
go. Like, you don't need anybody to manage it for you. You just don't sell. Just
Yeah.
buy it and don't sell. Like, you're good. And like that's even easier than she thinks it is. She's like, well, I want someone to like manage it for me, like do this stuff. And I was like, you literally don't. You don't need that. You don't need anybody to
Yeah.
manage it for you. Just freaking buy it and sit on it. Like that's using it. Like you take it off the market, and you just sit there and you look at it, and that's it. I mean, that concept is so. There you go. Yep, I got that
Yeah,
one
right?
too. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem is very few people understand this, right? Like the famous quote, few people understand this, few people are willing to put in the work. And it's like, if you are willing to put in the work and you are willing to do a little bit of research, the educational content you get back is mind blowing because
Yeah.
there's so much information out there that it's like, and people are all like us. It's like open source. We're like just giving it to you. We're like, hey, I had
Yeah.
this experience. This guy did
Pause.
this. This guy did that. I watched this. Like, take it for what it's worth. It's worth nothing because it's free. But do some research, fact check it. Go ahead, refute me. Come up with some ideas. I dare you. And if you do, maybe you'll change my mind. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
But like,
Right.
it's not I don't know. It's not this thing you need to sit there like an alligator to keep feeding it. The way like
Yeah.
rental housing is. Like rental housing is like having a pet alligator.
Oh, it's a
You
nightmare.
constantly have to feed it. It's like the
Yeah.
roof, the air conditioning, the renters, HOA, the taxes, the assessment, the paint. It's like the carpet. There's all this crap you constantly have to do to it. So and like my financial advisor told me a long time ago, like because I was like, hey, I think I'm going to do this and do that and get some rental properties. He goes, what happens if someone falls down the steps? I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean? He goes, you're a baseball player. He's like, you're going to court over that. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to sue you. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, think about the exposure there. I said, well, I'll put it in
Yeah.
LLC. He goes, okay, so you lose that whole thing. You lose the whole thing because no one's
Yeah.
going to feel bad for you.
No.
He's like, all right, cool. So then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm out of rental housing. But that's the way. That's kind of the way I look at it.
There goes that idea.
Yeah, and so I do understand when guys like HODL say, dude, just do this and nothing else. I
Yeah,
understand
totally.
I understand why he says that because he wants his life to be A to Z with no B,
Clean.
no D, no M's and
Yeah.
L's, none of that stuff, just A to Z, right?
Totally.
And he's like, hey, I'm sitting on A, I'm going to wait for Z. I'll just wait here. I'll wait till the Z hits the train station. Where someone like you or me that maybe has a business outside of things,
Yeah.
that's done business outside of things, we're like, okay, well, yeah, I do want to get to Z, but I got kids. They got to go to
Yeah.
school. Like I got the HOA to pay for. I pay for this goddamn gate because this thing fell down, or like this rat ate the wires out of this car, so I got to pay for that crap.
Yeah.
So there's just like always something. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
the real
There's
life.
also for me like angel investing. We do a lot of that. It's like social currency, right? So there's a social currency element to it, I think, and HODL doesn't care about that, and that's fine. But I find value in the kind of the networking, and also for my kids. I think about in the future, like I want things for them outside of just giving them money. We have money, right? But like you got to live a life too. It's not just like looking at a bank account all the time.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing, and I don't want to sit around and play video games. I want to be productive. I want to be busy. So my activity
totally.
bias is fiat mining. I'm okay fiat mining in the meantime. While I'm letting my sats work for me.
Yeah, totally. CJ, thanks, bro. Appreciate it. All
For
right,
sure,
man.
Jay. Thanks for having me on.
Cool.
Giving
Yeah,
us a great chance to have a long, like, winding conversation over all this stuff. So it's pretty cool.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, CJ Wilson. There you have it.